Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Ludo History, as always, and welcome back to the beginning of Historians versus New World, our 2022 edition of that. I am so excited. It's been a little bit of a while since we've had one of these, but I am very excited to get it started up again. I've got a pretty great suite of guests coming up for the next, basically probably month or so, maybe a bit longer, to keep these conversations going. And we're starting off the 2022 edition with my good friend Tess Watterson.
Hello.
Tess is a PhD student at the University of Adelaide in Australia, specializing in medievalism, historical video games, and witchcraft, which I know you are all very excited for based off how much the Discord has been popping off about that.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me in an opposite time zone. But yeah, interested to get into this game, which I have never played before, apart from watching a little bit of you playing it. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, it'll be a great time. But I want to start actually by giving you a chance to talk a little bit about what you do, both around historical games and in the rest of the historical sphere.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in history proper. So my kind of bachelor's degree. And then I shifted out of studying the actual medieval world into studying the way that we represent and understand the medieval world. So for my master's, I was looking at Robin Hood and Robin Hood games.
Incredible.
And yeah, and thinking about, I originally started that wanting to do every Robin Hood game that existed, because there's so many, and I was like, this is so interesting, and I was so keen to be able to do this kind of overview and think about the kind of long tradition of that, because there was very little kind of academic work on it. And then I realized very quickly that that is not possible in a master's of research thesis, and ended up focusing on one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's possible in a PhD thesis.
Probably not. So I chose the Prince of Thieves video game from the early 90s, and I was looking at the kind of context of that game in Gulf War America and the kind of gender, racial sort of politics and the way they're reflected in the game in a very different way to the film. And so thinking about the way that playing history and playing the Middle Ages and playing specifically in that case Robin Hood really changed the kind of dynamics that might have otherwise sort of seemed very similar between the game and the film, but once you're kind of embodying that role and doing things like collecting resources and all of that sort of thing, it kind of shifts the mindset that you have towards the world that you're witnessing in a way while you play, which is what I was really interested in by comparing the two. I then decided for my PhD that I wanted to use a kind of similar methodology and think about, the way that games represent the medieval world, and that was what I was sort of good at that point. That's what I was really interested in. But I wasn't so interested in Robin Hood as much as I was interested in some other kind of areas of the medieval past that we are most obsessed with in the modern world. And I'm really interested in gender and kind of ideas about sort of social acceptability and what was the norm and what we're interested in today, which is often things that were outside the norm of society at the time. So naturally, witchcraft. And so now I'm studying with a similar methodology, looking at how we interact with the past when we play a game that's set in the Middle Ages, but looking at witchcraft as a kind of case study to do that for my PhD. So I'm looking at Skyrim and The Witcher as my main case studies. Once again, I started with a whole host of games that I was going to look at and decided that was not going to work for a thesis. Needed to be able to do that kind of closer analysis and really look at the dynamics of the world that you're being presented with and the way you can interact with it. So it's been really interesting and thinking about these games that are so obviously historical and sell themselves as being historical, but also obviously fantasy and obviously set in a made-up world. So which parts of that do we read as historical and which parts of that do we accept as fantasy, and where's that line for players is what I'm really interested in.
Brilliant.
So that's my kind of academic spiel.
That were so many good points. Very quick digression to thank the anonymous gifter who gifted a tier 1 sub to Near on the Mad. That is super appreciated. But I actually want to cycle back to Robin Hood because we've had we've had so many games in the last like year and a half that have referenced Robin Hood, like even more so than there have been in long history. But right, did you see or play the Hood Outlaws and Legends game that came out?
I haven't played any of them. I've seen them all and been quite grateful that I'm not writing my master's thesis topic during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, because we played that a little bit on stream earlier, and that game is a lot because it's spooky paganism. Spooky paganism aesthetics, but Robin Hood.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you know, I haven't played any of them, and I've been kind of looking at it from afar, but I think there's definitely something about this moment, right, that we're living in across the world. Effectively, but I only have experience of what we're dealing with in Australia, but this kind of moment of looking at a world that is so out of our control, and where often rich people are getting richer, and all these kind of ideas that has impacted, you know, lower socioeconomic communities the most. And looking at that world, and there is something even more appealing than before about the idea of this hero, this kind of Robin Hood hero, and being able to embody that. And I obviously have no way to research to back that up, but I'm just so sure that there is something about that situation that we're all in that is making that even more attractive.
Yeah,
so.
I agree, but I think that's not the only thing that's making more attractive, because...
No.
Right, unfortunately, I think, right, there's like that the vague anti-Christian, anti-capitalist backlash, but then there's also leaning into it farther, because we'll see in this game, obviously, but there's been a lot of like city builders coming up recently in the near past or near future that are very much looking at a very specific idea of the Middle Ages.
Yeah, and a very specific blend, like you said, of that kind of like spooky neo-paganism and those kind of elements sometimes, but very similar themes we're seeing in a lot of those games of that blend of fantasy with the Middle Ages that is sort of different, I think, to what we've seen maybe 10-15 years ago. And moving away in a lot of ways from a lot of the kind of classic fantasy elements, kind of Lord of the Rings style games that we saw earlier in RPG kind of history, I think.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? What are some of the changes you've been seeing in the medievalism?
I don't know. I mean, obviously there's so many, but I just think in terms of the elements that are being incorporated, I think seeing a lot of games that I don't even know what to term a lot of it, but what we see in like Valhalla and a lot of the games I know that you've been playing that kind of use these Viking themes, bringing in a lot more of that, like the kind of paganism and the kind of almost like druidy kind of magic and things that feel like they're kind of playing with traditional ideas about like fantasy and magic, whereas they're sort of moving away from that idea in some ways of the sort of scholar wizard. I think not always, obviously this is really broad vague things, but just in terms of what seems to be more interesting and appealing to even, you know, I notice in some D&D games and streams that I've watched, the type of character that people want to create in terms of the way that they engage with magic seems to be getting more towards those kind of pagan, like natural kind of versions of magic, as opposed to you know, the kind of Gandalf image of the wizard. Absolutely. Which I'm not sure. I don't know what's sort of motivating all of that. I guess I'm sure there'd be a bit of a kind of gender element to that as well, and to creating something that doesn't feel quite so necessarily masculine, I guess, as maybe the kind of scholarly world of Tolkien's kind of wizard might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I super agree with that. It's interesting, right? To almost push back on it, we'll see it more when we get into the game, but there still is a very, very clear divide of, right, in magic based on scholarly study and intelligence. So D&D-isms are alive and well. Even as games are trying to problematize your Gandalf wizard in their ivory tower, they still have the They still have the stat lines to support it, which is wild.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I definitely wasn't saying that was gone.
Oh yeah.
Just thinking about the sort of big trends, and even looking at when I was sort of scrolling through the website for New Worlds before this, and thinking about games like Horizon Zero Dawn, and all these kind of. There's a lot of they're wearing furs, and they've got like the bow and arrow on their back, and it's a bit just kind of more. I don't want to say more pagan because it is, but it's that sort of image that people I think are trying to achieve. Not just in the magic.
Yeah, and actually, bringing up Horizon Zero Dawn, I think is super interesting here because the other half of the aesthetic, being another game that is set explicitly in the American West, is the frontiersman trapper. Right?
Absolutely.
And so you end up with a really cool entanglement of, I guess, pre-modern paganisms, or imagined pre-modern paganisms, and the individualist frontiersman.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that that's blending with the Middle Ages, because we have this so clear association between fantasy and the Middle Ages in video games, and you see armor and your brain automatically is like, oh, it's the European Middle Ages, but then we're actually blending that with all these ideas about kind of colonialism and sort of early modern history in lots of different parts of the world that people are drawing on snippets of.
Or in some
which
cases,
is really fascinating.
In some cases, more than snippets of. That feels like a great way to highlight one game that they are doing more than snippets of, which is to say this one. That New World is very early modern, but also very medieval. And so, while I'm loading up the game, do you think there's actually a meaningful difference to say this is a medievalist game versus this is an early modernist game?
So the really interesting thing about that with my research with witchcraft is what a lot of people think happened during the Middle Ages. The immediate thing people think about when you talk about witchcraft is the Witchcraft Trials in Europe, and they think Middle Ages, and that's the Monty Python sketch, those kind of ideas about the idea that a mass persecution of witches, often women, but not just women, there were plenty of men, and this kind of idea of that sort of brutality must have happened in the Middle Ages. But it didn't. Middle Ages were proper over before the rise of witchcraft persecution across Europe. It was a very early modern trend. We don't like to think that, because I think what most kind of historians discuss for this, we like to relegate that to a medieval past. We like to think that's something that would have happened long before something we can associate with modern and with ourselves. And I think that's a big thing with how we like to think about the world is popular kind of imagination has a real distinction between something that is pre-modern and something that is modern. And pre-modern, like Middle Ages or ancient, we get to do things that are different to what we can do in the modern world. And early modern sits in the middle and kind of blurs that, because there's so much that is actually very similar to the medieval world, some things that are starting to build what we see today in the world. So it's a really tricky, I think, time period for people to actually understand and grasp as this kind of middle bit to what we understand to be ourselves versus something different from ourselves, which is the Middle Ages, in people's kind of imagination. So it's really interesting, I think, to see that blend and to have people need that medievalism to grasp and to see this as a medieval world where they can run around and hit people with swords and do all these things, but actually wanting elements that are very early modern, like these kind of frontier images and all that sort of thing, like Witchcraft Trials, like all of that. So we put it back in the Middle Ages so that we can still have our medieval, distanced from ourselves fantasy, but with all these things that we actually are really interested in and want to play with. Is kind of how I see it.
I like that. I thought a lot, and it fits nicely with this game, because this game claims to be set in the 17th century, and and yet.
This is the streets from last time where I was like, this straight up looks like a Ren Fair. I love it.
It is a Ren Fair.
It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. I actually want to teleport places because we're gonna play.
What an outfit!
Hey, we got to redeem. We got a redemption to change my outfit that says random bullshit go, and therefore, I oblige.
Effectively, very much.
Perfect. Also, we're still in
Oh,
our
wow.
holiday festival, so we're just gonna fly away to another town. That'll look exactly like this town,
It's such an
but underwater.
interesting. Hmm.
Oh, Reed, you're a horrible person. Has redeemed a compliment, so we need to find something that we like about this. You horrible person,
I've
Reed.
just something that we like about this.
Something that we like about this.
I mean, as someone who plays a lot of fantasy, very much not for the history, am I allowed to say that I like the escapism of it?
Sure.
It looks pretty. I would want to run around there in a game. I certainly wouldn't want to do that as a historian, but
Sure.
as a player,
Yeah, makes sense to
otherwise
me.
I will bear that in mind, and I will think about something that I like about it as we go, because I haven't seen enough.
Perfect.
What about you? Surely you've played a lot of this.
I have played a lot of this, and there is a lot I can speak in very vague general terms of where they seem to have. There are moments where they have some idea about what they're doing, but for something much more concrete, I actually do like that even though their holiday festival is utterly generic, I actually do like that they are decorating it with strings of light or with strings of these little multicolored crystals, and they're not leaning, even in this town, which is built in a malaria-ridden swamp for no obvious reason, it is making sure to include these bits of color in it.
It's very nice. I was looking at that and thinking I liked the very wrong time period lights. They're very pretty.
They're very pretty. Okay. Now then, I'm gonna
But
just set up some random. Ooh, I can actually do
No, I
main
was just
story.
gonna ask, they're magic crystals? Is that what you said they are?
That's what they
Making
look
them
like.
alive?
They look like these
They look
little
like- okay.
stars.
Yeah.
Right? They look like they're just little fake
Cool.
stars that are doing stuff. I don't know.
Beautiful.
I got nothing.
That's the best part about a fantasy world. You can just say it's magic.
Exactly. And we're actually gonna do main story, which means I'll have to interact with other players,
Okay.
which is always spooky.
Cool.
But we're gonna try it, and hopefully they won't mind my outfit being terrible.
There's a question
Wolfie.
in the chat about.
Yup.
Yeah, you got it.
Wolfie asks, how do you separate the two? You find it really hard to not think about all the inaccuracies when consuming historical media. Which, mood, I also struggle with that. But I have now made it my brand to struggle with that. So, I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah, I think, I guess shifting my mindset from when I first started playing, I mean, I struggle with it, right? I absolutely think about it all the time. But moving from a mindset of, like, this is accurate or this is inaccurate, therefore this is good or bad, which is how I definitely started studying historical games. I think that's how a lot of us sort of were thinking that kind of accuracy debate. Is this correct, therefore is it good? And just shifting to that idea of why on earth is it the way that it is? That's interesting. Why did we make it that way? Why would someone want this wildly inaccurate outfit? Why would someone want you to be able to have that interaction? And just finding it interesting and trying to think about the why and the context, as opposed to just finding it bad, because we know it's bad. But
true.
sometimes it's like gloriously bad and it's entertaining. But for the most part, yeah, just being like, well, why do you want to combine those two time periods, and finding that interesting as opposed to irritating?
Fair enough.
Is how I do it. Because I mean, I play a lot of D&D, and you just have to embrace the fact that the world has an idea of what something that feels medieval that is fun to do is, and lean in and sort of be like, why, and enjoy that, as opposed to always critiquing it, or you just can't enjoy anything.
Yep.
Oh, for our Witchcraft Medieval expert. Hello. exciting being called an expert on witchcraft.
I know.
If anyone has questions about witchcraft, hit me up. I may not know the answer, but I'll do my best. European, medieval, early modern witchcraft, obviously.
Speaking of witchcraft, they do give us the power to just have... They have 3 different magics in this game.
I was reading that,
which is this fire that I am being very bad at. I have no intelligence, so I am not good at.
Cool.
My character is all martial all the way, and so this is very much a. What I am good at is getting killed by this guy, apparently.
So which type of enemy is this? There's like multiple different...
Yeah, this guy is ancient.
Ancient, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say at that point, while we're fighting one of these enemies of the world, these natural relics, the obvious racism. I'm sure you've talked about this on the stream before.
Oh, absolutely.
But that idea that, like, you know, these were once human and there's all these relics of the past on this magic island that you find. But yeah, that whole concept of making them kind of a past race in a new world that you get to explore is obviously immediately alarming.
Yes. I just think these are only one of 4 functionally indistinguishable entities that are doing the exact same thing. Right? Because there's the Lost, and there's the Corrupted, and there's the Ancients, and the only difference is, are they skeletons, are they zombies, or are they weird and red?
Okay.
Literally the only meaningful difference between them. Hey, we got him. Now I can, Chat, have you noticed I haven't actually, played this game in like a month, and I'm very bad at it. Also... Yes. Since there was the comment on the scientific revolution, I think we have some lovely things to talk about in this game with that, because, right, this is a case where I think the fantasy of the game ends up being accidentally, better. In that, right, you have these magics, and they're fine. Right? And you can just do these magics. No matter... And yet, one of the main factions is rah-rah rationality, who needs ethics committees when we can do science. Naturally, that's the faction I'm part of. And those two are not mutually exclusive. Right? So one of the cases... There. Reed, you wanted a compliment, I actually gave you a better compliment. They don't make the magic systems... Even though they're just like a generically fantasy element, as I pull up a random ass void gauntlet here to really ruin my day. As I just have this random thing. The void gauntlet has the power of letting you throw things or throw these little bolts at people, or you can just turn it into a Halo Void Sword. Literally just the Halo energy sword, right there.
Oh my god, it is.
Look at it. Look at how gorgeous it is. Incredible. And so it is fairly strong, not gonna lie. Or you can play with ice gauntlets instead. And ice gauntlets basically just like, hey, what if have a pillar?
Oh.
You can just make buckets of ice on people.
Cool. Of course.
Oh boy. This is gonna go poorly. Run. I have only...
That's my tactic in a lot of games,
I have only magic, when I'm going against 2 things that do not like that it's very hard to defend against these guys when I only have magic, because I am very bad at magic.
Why aren't you using
Because
martial things?
I can only equip 2 weapons at a time, and I was showing you all the magic things when I aggroed them.
Of course.
Because did not plan that very well at all. Okay, we're gonna switch back to better weapons, which I can't equip that yet either. Huh.
Oh.
I need to be level 36 to equip the weapons I actually want to equip.
Ugh.
Problems. That's alright. We'll go hatchet bow right now. Yay. Okay, now, we are slowly making our way over here in order to do the next raid, because I think that's what's coming up today, is that I am going to be woefully under-equipped to do a raid.
That's with other players? Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. We'll see. If there's no one in the vicinity, I'm just gonna like roll with it. And go do other quests. But if there are people around, this is the next main story element. So, actual progress. Because the plot right now is that there's this thing called the corruption that is bad. It's spooky red. It makes people spooky and red. And that's obviously a bad thing. So we are trying to persuade the different factions to work together for the first time in ever in order to take care of it.
Cool.
Hooray. And right now we're trying to persuade the scientists that they really do want to get along with the Templars, i.e. the Covenant, who are just Templars.
Yeah. Of course they are.
And actually work together against the bad guys. Because for some reason, they did not independently come to the conclusion of the thing that makes people spooky and red is bad.
What a classic RPG plot that they're wanting you to...
I know, right? It's the biggest MMO plot.
Yeah.
No one said the main story of this was good. The things that are supposedly good about this game are all the ancillary writing and not the main story.
I did just see in the chat. Generic MMO plot, correct.
Yep.
Same.
Yep.
Oh,
okay. Oh, look,
that.
there it is, right there.
Done.
Perfect. Look at that obviously video game temple right there.
Oh, yeah.
Whew.
Just beautiful.
Yep. Of course, that's something the games you're working with have a whole lot of, right? Very generic magic spaces.
Yeah, it sure is. It's interesting. I mean, literally, actually, as soon as you pointed that out, I thought about... I mean, it doesn't actually look that similar, but my brain went to it. One of the, I don't even know if it's a temple. I think it's supposed to be, like... It's in the graveyard in the first Witcher game.
Incredible.
There's, like, a building that looks just so similar. But, yeah, no, there's very much a fantasy version of what medievalist spaces should look like. And I think even when people create new games that they're trying to, even when they're trying to do something that is more historical and like move away from tropes from games, it's really hard because there is such a clear image of what a fantasy medieval magic temple or magic space or ancient temple or whatever should look like. And so if you go too far from that, the kind of general popular imagination version, then players are like, oh, this doesn't look right, because that's what we're used to seeing. So there's this kind of line you have to walk between how different you can be from what is kind of accepted in the genre.
Yep. And equally obvious, mushroom people that explode.
Yeah. They're very D&D. They look like the I can't remember what they're called. So there's fungus people that is that with an M? I can't remember what they're called. But they look like...
Yeah, I know
like
who you're referring to.
I just bought some minis of them.
Incredible.
Yeah, thank you. That's it in the chat. My connets? Is that how you say it? I don't know. Those.
Sure. In
But yeah, I think as soon as you play any like range of things within the same kind of genre, fantasy, medievalism, a tabletop, video game, whatever, even reading novels, like you see those trends. You're like, oh, that looks familiar to this thing from this other game.
Yep.
That's the.
Yep. And
Hey, yes, Grand Chicken Lord. Thank you for your. I think there was a discussion of how a lot of the spaces in the God of War streams were just the dwarf architecture from Lord of the Rings.
oh
Yep.
god, have you seen the next Valhalla DLC? It is literally just
Oh,
Weather Workshop. It is in Svartalfheim, which means that it is just Weather Workshop.
I
It
mean,
is.
look, great for Lord of the Rings fans, I guess.
Yeah, I wish we couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Right. I wish it was possible to not pinpoint exactly where the things come from. And yet it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There's
When
something
it's a kind of
comforting
carbon copy.
in not knowing. And yet we're stuck knowing a little bit too clearly.
You've chosen the wrong research area if you want to not know things while you play fantasy games.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep. But yes, right,
So
the
the
Dwemer are also extremely Art Deco.
Oh.
Extremely Art Deco.
The green glowing situation on the floor. Is this from the exploded?
Have not figured that out yet.
Cool. Cool.
I'm too busy dying to figure that out.
And these are a different
I haven't
type
seen
of
these before.
enemy. Okay, and these are just infected with the red, whatever it is. What's it,
Correct.
the corruption?
Yeah, these are not. This is not corruption. These guys are they're just mushrooms.
Oh, they're just like that. Oh, okay, cool. We love.
They seem to just kind of be like that.
Cool. Gotta have some side quests.
Ugh, and they're respawning way too quickly.
Are we going to this temple on purpose? Is this
Yes,
where the
this
next
is-
quest thing is? Okay.
I need to find all
see.
these research notes, I think, and then. Yeah, this is where the main story is taking us, which is great. It's just lovely. I'm sure we have to go inside there to rescue. Oh boy, we'll read that later. We're gonna go on a go read things spree as soon as I find all 5 of these. Oh.
Okay. Observation report. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly, they're scientists. He's a
Yeah, the
scientist. He gives scientific field notes. And by science I mean 19th century.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, yeah, that very, not medieval. But I mean, this game is not claiming to be medieval, but that very, we understand the world through science now, kind of
Exactly.
perspective, yeah. Which, yeah, for anyone not aware, the scientific revolution was very much people wanting more of a connection to the kind of spirituality and their understanding of God and understanding God's world a lot of the time than it was like an intentional move away from religion. It was very entwined. And so a lot of games, I think, represent this idea of like science as distancing from religion, which it kind of, I guess, evolved into, but it certainly wasn't like, we're secular now during like the early scientific revolution. So it's interesting the way that games represent that.
Absolutely, because the factions here, well, actually, if we pull up the map here, you can see the faction map. You've got the Covenant, which is Protestants. Right, they're the Templars, but also Protestants.
Of course.
There's the Syndicate, who's purple, which are the secular scientists who hate anything that looks like religion. And then there's the Marauders, who are green, who are... Both of these are dumb. Why do that when you can punch people?
Right.
Which, yep, truly the most early modern of trichotomies. It is very, very funny. Anyway, let's read these field notes now that we have actually not be about to die. Where is it? Main story.
Yeah, the comment about science versus magical religion, most hated tropes as a scientist. Nice. Yeah, same, right? Like it's just so frustrating. And I'm trying to think if there are any games that I can think of that have like a more interesting representation of the there's a difference between going against the church and going against religious belief if you have a kind of institution that has that power, because a lot of scientists, early version of scientists, in the early modern world were considered like heretical because they were going against some of the teachings of the church, but that didn't necessarily mean they were going against religion.
Yeah, or they were going against the treaties of the church, or they were heretical not because their science was against the teachings of the church, but because they were Protestant and going against the teaching of the church.
Yep. So, yeah, there's so much more nuance there that I think could be really interesting if games tapped more into.
Okay, where did these just go? I am trying to find the things, and I am having trouble. It's weird. There it is. Okay.
Hey.
My colleagues and I have discovered a fascinating phenomenon at the ruins in Weaver's Fen. To call it a microclimate would be an understatement. It appears to be a small, permanent hurricane. I'm reminded of the colossal storm wall that pens in the whole island of Eternum. The smaller one seems to act on the same principles. The potential implications of this research are staggering. Among other things, we might finally find a method to escape this island. To differentiate our phenomenon from its cousin, the Great Storm Wall, we've taken to calling it the Lesser Stone Wall, or LS. Some observations on the LS. The vortex circumference is roughly 150 yards and remains remarkably stable over time. Wind velocity is approximately 130 miles per hour. The eye of the storm hasn't moved an inch since we started observing it. We do not yet know what lies at the eye of the LS. None of our attempts to breach the wind barrier have yet been successful. Perhaps if we were to build some kind of anchoring system. Observation report day 2. Our campsite seems to have been surrounded by wildlife sometime in the small hours. They're acting strangely but haven't moved to attack us yet. I've heard my fellow scientists make reference to a phenomenon called blight that infects angry earth creatures in Eden Grove. The description seems to fit my observations of the creatures that now circle the ruins. The evidence suggests that the blight is spreading south. Dr. Fawn has hired several hunters to guard the camp perimeter from attack. I persuade one of them to collect tissue samples from the creatures for me. We'll see what the microscope reveals about this blight. A closer look at these blighted tissue samples have revealed both animal and vegetable characteristics. Both hemoglobin and chlorophyll are present in the blood. Or is it sap? I have so many questions. Me too, Theo. Me too. I took a creature of the red fungal-looking growths that afflicted the creature, presumably as a result of the blight. Unfortunately, the tissue sample ate through the glass slide before analysis could be completed. Curse these magical diseases. Meanwhile, the lesser storm wall seems to be growing more unstable. Its circumference now varies up to 3 yards, and the wind velocity has increased. Observation continues. Hooray! Now, where the heck am I going? I don't know where this storm wall is. I assume it's near where
the map.
It is quite the
I
map.
find the map really interesting too. The way that the kind of spaces are represented, I guess some of those are structures and things when you zoomed in closer, is very reminiscent of the way that one would represent maps of archaeological sites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very much.
That's interesting.
Very much.
Yeah. That's you
Right.
do it straight away.
All the way up to showing you all the gaps in the foundations. Is very much archaeological site. And precise mapping of exactly how things are ruined. I like that thought.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. There you go. That's something that I like as a choice.
Heck.
I mean, I don't like that it's an ancient civilization trope, but I like the way they've done the map for it.
Yep. There
really
was a couple
interesting
spots where you can actually identify that right here. This one's an overturned cart. And I've marked it on that level of precision. Basically, any obstacle that is man-made is marked in this very clear color.
Cool.
Yeah. Now,
That's really
all the
cool.
actual geologic formations, completely indecipherable.
Yeah,
But
very.
the man-made ones are very clearly marked.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's interesting in itself, but like it's framing it as this kind of exploration of this land that is only inhabited by, once human creatures, whatever, whatever. But the emphasis, what you're actually like shown on the map, is just the man-made like structures, as opposed to showing you the detail of the natural world. So
Yeah.
even though it frames it like you're exploring this territory, really, it's like it's obvious what their kind of emphasis is on the once civilization.
Exactly. Right.
It's interesting.
This is oddly, it's oddly such an old new world, right? Because they're not leaning into, oh yeah, actual colonization and obliteration of extant cultures. Someone did all of that work for you.
Yeah, it gives you the like, oh, you're just dealing with like skeletons that are magical.
Exactly.
You're not.
It's purely a coincidence that one of the things you're uh, dealing with are all the ruins of these previous civilizations, and you don't have to feel bad about it.
Exactly.
You don't have to feel
They're
bad about
already
it at all.
ruined.
Exactly.
No,
Someone else did all the hard work for all the messy stuff for you. You're fine.
that was a big crocodile gator.
That was a big gator.
Ooh.
No.
It's a real close range archery.
Real close
What
range
are you
archery.
eating?
Travel rations. Any 2 bits of food that have been cooked together.
It looks. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This looked very bizarre.
I think this is
Mine
also the
is.
closest we've been able to. Oh. Hello.
Oh,
Just don't mind me, sir. This is the closest we've been able to get to any of the ginormous ancient faces.
yeah. Interesting vibe here.
Isn't it?
It... mm.
Yep. They're certainly not based on anything. Right, we've tried.
I'm not gonna
We've tried
lie,
for so
for
long. They feel
a
like they're based
second
on
there.
something, but they're definitely
Yeah,
not
for a
based.
second there, from the side, that face made me think of what was the stupid evil one's name in the new Star Wars.
Oh, true.
What was his name? That's what that face looked like, to be honest. The one that ended up really boring.
Yeah.
I want
Snoke?
to say Snoke, and that's nothing. That's not what it's called.
No, I think it is what his name was.
Surely not.
That's what I remember his name being. Oh, I died. Rip.
Snoke! His name was Snoke.
Yeah,
God.
what a terrible name.
What a disappointing.
What a
trilogy.
terrible name for a
Anyway.
terrible character.
That's what that face looked like from the side. I think it was the scar
True.
that helped.
True.
Why am I not looking at the chat? Thank you.
Cool, so I died over there. That doesn't help me because I still don't know where the heck I'm supposed to go. Because the map marker for those main story quest has a bad habit of bugging and just not spawning in.
Oh.
Which is very funny, but also
Right.
extremely unhelpful.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We're just gonna do random stuff and start making our assume we were in the right direction. And help out this town, which for some reason is still existing.
That's the again, not gonna lie, some Star Wars, although also like every sci-fi or dystopia vibes from the like big flags on the front, the
Yep.
big banners, not flags.
Yep.
Interesting.
Like, I know they're supposed to just be marking who the various they indicate what
Yeah,
faction is actually in control of the town. Because of course the factions are in control of the town for some reason. Oh yeah, actually, while I'm in town, I should go buy shopping and buy more health potions.
Oh, yeah.
That seemed important. Because I don't care about
Is
gold
this
for any of the things
snow?
like... Yeah, it's the holiday season, and therefore there is snow in every town. And nowhere else,
Right.
obviously.
In the swamp.
In the swamp.
Cool.
Yep. in the middle of the Atlantic, but also North America.
Of course there is.
Yeah, of course. How else do you know it's winter?
Exactly. If you don't have pastel glowing crystals in the sky and snow.
Exactly. Don't worry, it'll go away in like 2 weeks when the event ends.
So when the website said that there were some raids or whatever invasions that require like 50 players, blah blah blah. How many players are playing this? Like, I don't feel like there's that many people when you're running around. If you're in like a kind of hub.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one of the less popular hubs. So that's most of why that is looking that way.
Are there enough players for this to be like? Is it as popular as you think they kind of intended it to be?
Sort of, but no. So at peak, there were almost 1 million players per month.
Okay. Okay.
Now, last check, they had just over 100,000 a month.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is still a lot, but is not that much. Okay, I'm just gonna buy like... Wow, those are expensive. Holy moly. That's alright. 81 strong health potions. And then a lot of food.
Sorry, I can see my dog barking like mad. If I turn my video off for a second, will I be able to just turn it back on?
You should be able to.
Is that alright if I duck out for 1 sec?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just gonna do shopping for the next little bit, so nothing important. Those are attribute bonus foods, those aren't helpful. I just want recovery foods. Health recovery. Travel rations. I don't care about that. I want like 61 of those. Perfect. Perfect. So now we're gonna swap some of these out to be, better. Awesome, I've got 111 strong health potions, that helps. And then we will get rid of most of these. These are all useless, I don't care about them. 4 and 5, okay. Now, maybe, just possibly... What, Magistressa, we were told to put on some bullshit, and so we put on some bullshit. Also, did I mention that I'm a monk? You can tell because I'm tonsured.
Beautiful. I am back, but I don't know if my video has come back on the
Your
YouTube
video
stream.
is still working on it. It'll be up
cool.
shortly.
That's fine.
I
have a dog with me now.
Oh, hello. Hello, puppy.
2 of them are fast asleep. One of them was screaming her head off at the window for no
Incredible.
reason.
Look, at least I'm not dressed like this guy.
I can't. He was running away.
It was very garishly purple. Let's chase them down.
Why not be purple in this environment?
Oh, look at that mask. Honestly, a legend.
Wow.
Running great axe with bright purple, like something or other masks. I don't even know what mask to call that. It was just a mask-shaped mask. But it does highlight the temporal weirdness of this, right? You've got generic paladin.
Oh yes, very much. Oh, the gauntlet with the wings.
Yeah. Yep. We had the dude Claes Erasmus up topside, who was very early modern. Actually, very yeah. Look at him. Look at this man with his fantasy 17th century Dutch outfit.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yes, it is great.
Can we use the redeem to ask the guest for spicy takes? I'm curious about some medieval witchcraft hot takes. Oh gosh.
I have redemptions for both ice cold and spicy takes.
I have to think of some hot takes.
Exactly. So we will not
I
promise
have any hot
anything, but you are welcome to try.
Ooh, which
There is our spicy take. We are. Your camera has still not come on, so let's see if we can sort this out quick.
Oh no.
Oh, I just needed to tab
You're
into
all
the window.
missing.
I just needed
You're
to
all
tab into
missing
the
my
window.
dome.
This was my bad. I just needed to click into the window to reload it.
There you go.
You can now all see the puppy.
Yeah.
Hello, puppy.
It's Daisy. She's a
Aw.
menace.
We love her.
She will continue to grab my hand if I stop patting her. All right. Do you want a spicy take about history and witchcraft, or a fantasy witchcraft?
Whichever you prefer.
Oh no. Do I have a spicy take? I mean, what's an unpopular opinion about witchcraft? I guess something lots of people. Oh, it's not quite witchcraft. I was gonna say something about the Spanish Inquisition.
No, give me your Spanish
something a lot of
Inquisition
people-
hot take.
Oh, it's not really a hot take. It's just what like a lot of people don't know. And there's some connection, but
Yeah, do
there's
it.
like very, very historical revisionist takes on the Spanish Inquisition, that it was really not that bad. I don't know if a lot of people know about that. There were closed archives that were opened, like, this is now like 30 years ago, and historians made a pretty big claim that the Black Legend, which is about the idea of the Spanish Inquisition being really bad and evil and doing all those horrible things, they really didn't kill like that many people relative to the legend. So I guess that's kind of a spicy take of sorts, that I agree with some of that revisionist history that I read. But yeah, it seems like Spanish Inquisition really not that bad.
Really
that a spicy
not that
take?
bad. Yeah.
Really not that bad. I mean, bad, but like certainly not.
could have been worse.
Could have, yeah, is made out to be a lot worse than they actually were.
Yeah, I think that's fair, given the amount of currency Inquisitions have in pop media.
Right.
I think it is spicy. Yeah. Spicy on a general level to be like, you know, maybe not. Maybe Dragon Age doesn't need the faction that is entirely just comically evil Inquisition that you have to save it from.
Right.
Maybe that wasn't a necessary choice.
You've been a redeemed marginalia moment?
A marginalia moment. So I will actually need to activate the. We will click over to the interview room and then realize I do not have the emo wall up. So we are going to actually quickly run away. The marginalia moment has been delayed by virtue of skeletons. We'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
Please hold for your marginalia moments. The skeletons,
the best.
Exactly, and all of. In the meantime, while I'm running away from skeletons, all of my emotes are 100% genuine manuscript art from all over the world, mostly medieval Europe, but also pre-conquest or immediately post-conquest Mexica, 19th century Ethiopia, 15th century Ethiopia, and 17th century Malay, I believe. I don't remember exactly what the dating on the owl is.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Okay. They are no longer chasing us. There are no alligators in the vicinity. Back to the emote wall.
While you fix that, if anyone has played, I don't know if anyone's played, it's like, I can't remember how you say it. It's Ink and Illuminati. It's like Ink Illuminati.
Yes.
I think it's on Steam, but it's really fun. It's a little marginalia game.
It still is. It still hasn't gotten its full release yet, which is annoying.
I know.
I've been keeping an eye on it for the moment it comes out.
Yeah, same. It's so cute though.
But
you play as various famous calligraphers. What's the word that I'm wanting? Or illuminators. People who are writing and making the little illuminated manuscript dudes that you guys are flooding the chat with, and they fight each other, and it's very fun. I can't remember who it is who's in it because I haven't played it for ages because it's not.
Yeah, it's sadly most of the player characters are all just like random, like a generic knight, a generic nun, Yoda, instead of actual people.
I swear they had. Oh, that's so sad. I swear there was one that was like.
Yeah, but all their animations are of actual marginalia.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty great. Anyway, as the emote wall has been flooded, this has been a marginalia moment.
That's awesome.
Exactly. And remember, chat, if you are not yet, if you follow, you get access to 5 emotes, and if you subscribe, you get access to an additional 14. With more emotes of unlocking for bits, higher tier subscriptions, and being around for a long time. It's great.
That's very cool. I love the little jousting marginalia moment that is on your screen. It's actually... I made a bet of sorts with a friend. I'm getting it tattooed after I finish my PhD.
Incredible. I love it. Worth.
And then I keep seeing the same image. I'm like, that's the one.
Absolutely worth.
I was going to be jousting snails because I love that. But then how can you go past a rabbit riding a snail with a man's face?
Exactly. How could you not?
What is the voice acting challenge that people are contributing to?
It is a surprise, but if within 1 month they are able to raise 500,000 channel points collectively, there will be a game that will be played that I will fully voice act, even though it will be humiliating for me and entertaining for you all. Oh yes, it is. I will tell you after the stream, but everyone else, it will be a surprise.
Hey. I get exclusive advanced knowledge.
Exactly. Thank you, Wolfie, for the 5 tier 1 gift subs. So, to Geo Anomaly, Tiara Ducky, Your Fault, Reed, and Horrible the Terrible. Enjoy your extra emotes.
And yeah, I see the question about the Anne Frank.
In current historical news, yeah.
I can't tell you more than what I read in articles.
Yep. The 20th century is.
There's like a break in the case. They've worked out. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, the 20th century it barely counts as history for us. We do media studies.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, I mean, it's very interesting. I don't have a historian's take on it, I'm afraid.
Exactly. I will just parrot other people's historians' takes and go that they have figured out the most probable answer, but it is just a probable answer. They have not solved the case because that's not how history works.
Yeah, it's very much still circumstantial kind of stuff, I think.
Exactly.
They've got very interesting.
Exactly. It's cool. But I don't think it fundamentally changes anything. Nor does it actually, fundamentally... Yeah, it doesn't fundamentally alter what we know about Anne Frank or how we ought to interpret her diary. Because it's not even the most interesting thing about her diary.
No, definitely not.
And also, by the way, thank you to Escudo for the 4 months of a tier 1 subscription, which is freaking awesome. Hooray. And a bunch of quests I'm not strong enough for yet, and we did get another level up, which is exciting. And we're getting very spooky
Do you want
music.
to get down?
Why are we getting spooky
Alright.
music? Okay. Well then. Let's see what else we can do here.
I can't get over this outfit situation.
My outfit is perfect, and I will take no
It's
criticism of it.
beautiful.
Okay, I genuinely don't know where I'm supposed to go for, like, the main story. Kind of a problem. Kind of a very big problem. So what do you say we...
So is that's a glitch? Like it just hasn't loaded?
Yeah, it just hasn't loaded.
Cool.
It's done this a few times, and usually I was able to sort of figure it out, but did not figure it out in this time. So, Huh. And with an anonymous gifter, we just hit a hype train.
Oh,
Grand Chicken Lord, thank you for enjoy your gifted tier 1 sub, and everyone else get hype.
I also just saw the question
Yes.
about the marginalia. Yeah, we don't really know a lot of them. Sometimes there's some people have tried to make connections between like the images and like what's actually going on in the story. Usually there isn't one. They sort of represent like they're meant to be kind of humor because they obviously are like a kind of inverted sense of what we expect, and things like that, or like they represent the ridiculousness of some of the elements of the story and like what humans get up to, but you're seeing it in like weird animals and all these different kind of elements. There's a lot of different historical interpretations about what they mean. So yeah, you're right. We don't really know.
Exactly. Imagine
my
having a
favorite, if
relationship
anyone-
to... You go.
No, you go.
Imagine thinking the art has to be related to the text.
My favorite marginalia, if anyone hasn't seen it, you have to Google the nun picking the penises from the tree. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's iconic. You can buy a badge of it. Like an enamel pin.
Yeah.
From the historian that does the research on it. Very cool.
Yeah. I love that one so much.
I want one. So good.
Okay. By the way, since we leveled up,
Oh, I see.
a quick digression into the stat line. We have strength, which affects these weapons. We have dexterity,
Dex,
which affects these weapons.
Uh-huh.
We have intelligence, which affects these weapons. It affects the rapier and the musket for some reason.
Of course it does.
Focus, not faith, focus, which helps our life staff and our void gauntlet. And constitution, which is just health.
Right. Focus makes me think of Sims Medieval.
Oh?
Which it shouldn't, because it's very different, but...
How so?
In medieval Sims, you just have like those you have a certain amount of focus, which is about like how much you're achieving your goals and things like that, and if you're like feeling good about things, which you get from doing, oh god, I don't remember, doing whatever the quest it is you're doing, or doing your like tasks in the kingdom. It's obviously not the same. Just as soon as it said focus, I was like, Sims Medieval.
Incredible.
Embarrassing insight to kind of games that I spend too much time playing.
Bah.
I love that you have a gun so much.
Oh yeah.
It's like, do you want a magic staff or a gun? I know we talked about this before. I just love it.
So many
Portuguese manuscripts. I don't know. I haven't read any. I mean, I don't speak Portuguese. Obviously, I don't need to speak it to see the marginalia. Look into it. Let us know.
Sheesh. Oh boy.
Wait.
I am in rough shape right now. I have been surrounded.
Yeah.
Quick dodge. Quicker heal. We're just gonna yeet that at him. And then we're gonna do this. Get the archer down, and then we should be okay. When combat in this game works, always a question. I will say it is actually quite fun. I like that it's got a somewhat more developed combat. Than a lot of MMOs do.
What like other game systems would you compare it to?
I mean, it's clearly
Or is
drawing
it
the
quite
most
different?
on a very, very basic sort of Dark Souls type system.
Mm-hmm.
Right, getting our basic cooldown management from other MMOs, but putting that into a vaguely more tactical.
Cool. Ancient chest. What do you do? Is that you unlocking the chest?
Yeah, I'm just stealing all the stuff in it.
What did you have to do to unlock it?
Just press E next to it for long
Just
enough.
like I
They're
was
all
trying to work out what the actual like avatar was sort of doing.
Oh yeah,
Could
no,
not.
you just kind of rifle through it with a generic loot things
Beautiful.
animation, because you just go grave
Cool.
robbing, and that's also fine.
That's just fine, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just fine. It's not a big deal.
Well, I mean, it's not. I suppose if the skeletons come to life and attack you, they can argue that you're not really robbing their graves if they got up and walked away themselves.
Exactly.
So then they can justify
And heck,
taking the stuff.
this
It's already disturbed.
This isn't even a grave. This is just
A place where there are
a
lots
bridge. This is a bridge that happens to be covered in
of...
corpses.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Also, it has a
Is that-
mage.
Oh,
It's a magic user.
is that ever something that's like interesting in the game? Are you supposed to be concerned that there are corpses everywhere, or is that just like they want to give you enemies so they don't?
They mostly want to just give me enemies, but
Cool.
these guys weren't in the game at first when it first launched.
Oh.
They added these guys into the game later.
And you said he's called a mage. Is that
He's called. This guy is technically a healer,
what is it?
but
A healer.
but some of the same asset or the same enemy type elsewhere is called a mage. So
Different. Cool. I'm so very interested in like the different terms that we use for
of course,
magic users, right, in fantasy games. It's very interesting. That was one of the first things I had to like suss out for my PhD is how I was gonna define if I'm gonna look at witches. Like how was I gonna define what a witch was? Am I gonna look at sorceresses? Am I gonna look at mages? Am I gonna look at wizards? If they have, you know, like for example, Sims Medieval, which is wizards, but obviously you can have female ones because there's only one like a type of class that you have. And so yeah, deciding how to term and like put bounds on that. And I think that's something all game designers obviously have to make those decisions.
Of
like
course.
what are they calling the different people, which historical traditions they're drawing on, or fantasy traditions.
no, hold up a minute. I killed the guy I was supposed to kill, and
Yeah.
then it didn't drop the thing it was supposed to drop.
Oh.
So I have to go kill another one.
It's making me miss archery.
Ha! If only I wasn't bad at the archery here.
You did pretty well.
I did better than I normally do, I'll give myself that. Necromancy, oh boy, Reed pointing out necromancy is just delayed healing. Perfect. But yeah, right, this game seems very uninterested in actually making there be a like coherent separation. Which is
Between
super.
necromancy and healing? Or...
I mean, actually yes,
Well,
but
between the different-
between different magic types.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, the whole system is powered by their spooky magic stuff, which they term Azoth, which is what
Yeah,
lets you
okay.
do offensive magic, but also is the thing that is like, when I died, I came back to life, right? I just respawned.
Yeah,
It's their
yeah,
in-game justification for why I respawned, and therefore it is also failing to
Right.
distinguish between necromancy and healing. Your health potions
Interesting.
are Azoth infused. Your other things are all Azoth infused. The whole world is infused with Azoth, which is why if you chop down trees, they're gonna respawn in a minute or two because it's an MMO, but also because of Azoth. And so the fact that this is
How much-
just
yeah.
North America is made not North America by the power of Azoth.
Of course. How much can you like learn about the history of the space. Like, you know, in RPGs, like you often find like you find history books and you
Oh
build up
yeah.
like a bestiary and all those sorts of things. How much can you learn about the history of the place, or is it because it's like abandoned? Are they just like, oh, it's just Aesop, it's just magic?
Oh no, you can. They are incredibly detailed
Okay,
about the history of the place. So if
cool.
we open up this document, every one of these
Right.
are pages you can
That's all about
find
it.
in the world. And as you can see, right, I am only like just over halfway through the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different categories, each with a bunch of different stories, each with a large number of pages.
Right, cool. So it's not like a vague, oh, because magic, like they give you a lot of
They give you a lot of detail.
world building around it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Even though, right, it annoys me because they do so little with it structurally. Right, they've got all these cool stories that they've said happened in the past that you can find. But
Right.
you don't actually get to play any of those. Right, some of these stories are genuinely cool. You don't get a chance to actually interact with them apart from reading how cool other people were.
Of course.
Because the game's mechanics are, you walk up to someone, you press E, you click through text boxes. You run up to someone, you press E, you click through text boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Who's getting attacked? Oh. Good, he's retreating.
Yeah, really interesting comment highlighted by Max KJ.
Yep.
We talked about this before. When/how did necromancy go from divination by talking to the dead, etc., to enslaving dead bodies and trapping souls and draining life? Yeah, I don't know. Really interesting though. That kind of like it feels like a very fantasy thing to think about. Like necromancy has become a like a class type of magic that people do, which, because in fantasy genre, you know, a lot of things are made into this version of like a way to gain power, a way to gain influence, or a way to gain resources or whatever. That's become like you can accumulate. Literally, in one of the D&D games that I'm a player in, one of my friends spends most of his time trying to turn skeletons into his own little army that follow us around. Like that's a huge kind of thing. That's the conception of it, and because it's been separated out, at least in the D&D world, from divination magic, like it has a different meaning. Whereas I think in actual history and actual kind of magic practitioners of the past who were doing whatever practices around things like divination and things like trying to communicate with the dead and things like that, like there weren't those distinctions, but put into genres, we have to make all these different categories so you can specialize in things, you get points and all these different things. So I think that might, I don't know exactly when that's kind of shifted to our conception of it, but I'm sure that in terms of game genre, like the fantasy genre stuff, we have to have much more clear distinctions between types of magic or types of power or whatever than the actual world has had in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know a little more on this. But in the Middle Ages, obviously there's a corruption of Greek necromantia to refer to black magic generically. But that's just generic, like demon summoning, etc. So it is then, actually I think it is with modern fantasy that you actually see the sort of cognizant that there was a corrupted form, and then a very bad, like, undoing of the corruption into death magic being summoning dead people to do stuff.
Yeah,
it is very much a modern thing.
I don't know much about like non-Western history stuff, obviously, but I think also there's probably a lot more complexity and nuance to the way that various like native cultures and things use ideas about magic and death and necromancy and things like that, compared to the way that we've like categorized it in the Western world, European world.
Absolutely.
Which I don't know much about, but I'm sure there's like, there's a lot more nuance there and a lot more like there's probably a colonial angle to the way that, we like to put things into categories, just like gender, just like race, just like lots of things. That with the kind of colonial project, the world had to be put into boxes and categories and binaries and things.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that kind of process as well probably is connected to the way that we have done that to magic too.
Yeah, I think that's very likely because one could easily see, entanglement with something like very bad ideas about voodoo having an influence.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously that has the aesthetics a whole lot of necromancy and creation of some weird conflation of social death and literal undeath.
Yeah.
So, I think there's definitely conflation and therefore a lot of baggage that can associate with that. I'm thinking like specifically through Diablo, and like
Oh yeah.
their witch hunt or their quote unquote witch doctor being also a necromancer.
Yep. Oh, every time I see witch doctor things, it's just,
Oh yeah, it's real bad.
White people need to leave it alone.
White people
We
need
need
to
to-
stop. Uh-huh.
Just in general, in so many ways.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, the comment in the chat, yeah, box putting, one of the most damaging things seem to happen to education and communication knowledge. Yep.
Yep. It's interesting, right?
Yep.
Ethnographic tendency to categorize and to make sense of things being actually just the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It is not a uniquely Western thing. That is true. Just the way that a lot of the, I guess what I'm saying, the way that a lot of the Western world now functions is based on the kind of categories that were formed mostly around the time of colonization and of like expanding into other territories and seeing a new world that they didn't understand, and so needing to put it into boxes in terms of what they understood from their world, and like turning something that might have had completely different categories into something that fit into the categories of whichever kind of colonist community was exploring.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just thinking it around.
Definitely not to say that Western world is the only place that has categorization.
Uh-huh. And it's real fun when the categories just completely fall apart for questionable reasons. Like in this person, right? His name suggests that he's Roman, right?
Yep.
Tullius Volusus. This man be Roman, but he's an alchemist. And he's wearing
Not Roman clothes at
England
all.
Tudor?
Yeah.
English
kind of
Tudor,
bent over,
like
but it looks.
Tudor without the lace ruff.
Yeah. Oh, how bizarre. Nice.
Yep. So another thing where the game promised something that didn't actually deliver on, is the idea of, oh yeah, you're interacting with all these people from throughout history, yet somehow they're all actually fairly generic. Right? They all kind of look the same, because they're all dressed
Right.
early modern. To be fair, alchemists love to
Yeah.
give themselves Latin names. You're not wrong.
It's true.
He could just be early
Yeah, I
modern
played-
and be trolling us.
A lot of games run into that problem where, like, there's so many interesting things to draw on, and as soon as you open up that space of fantasy and you're not setting it in a specific time period, a specific place, you can kind of draw on so many different things and take so many like tiny bits from other cultures, from other time periods, and smush them all together, is you end up with something that kind of loses a lot of the meaning associated with any of those really interesting things, because you've kind of just smushed so many of them in one place. I think a lot of games run into that problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna just
Ooh,
not
what is
be.
going on there?
Ghosts. A lot of ghosts,
Oh, cool.
and this revenant who has a crossbow,
So funny.
and
Yeah.
also is significantly stronger than I am, so I'm gonna run away.
Cool. So are they graves? We're in like a graveyard situation? Is that what I could see?
Ha! Technically, yes.
No?
Oh, yes, yes. Reed, I've got a graveyard for you. Reed was on just before
Intensified,
Christmas,
yeah.
and we did a whole episode on graveyards.
Nice.
This one's a doozy.
Yeah, interesting.
This one's an absolute doozy of chaotic disorder and also
So spread
whatever the
out,
heck this
yeah.
thing is. Also this dude.
Mm-mm.
No thanks. How about no? You're just chilling, leaning on the doorway?
In
I'm
the
gonna leave you
doorway.
be. Okay. We have escaped from the level 39 area. We're gonna be not here. Okay. So, I think at this point the play is everywhere is too strong for us.
Is that time to do some grinding to level up the...
Just a little bit. We're gonna
Doing
head
more
down.
things,
We're gonna head down
or-
to the other side of complete other side of the territory, to do this one because it's mentioning
Oh.
a wise woman, and that feels like
Swamp sorceress. Yes.
this feels
Tell
like
me more.
exactly. This feels like important content for today.
So interesting.
And then after that, we will see if we can locate where the heck this wall is supposed to be, which is probably going to be an exit to menu, and then go back in and see if it reloads.
Oh, we have another big statue.
We do have,
Same
in fact,
face.
we have the exact same
Same
big
face.
statue. I'm never going to unsee Snoke here.
I'm so sorry.
No, let me down. He's got a spooky orb. I have not figured out the significance of the orbs.
Cool.
They just
Comment
kind
in
of
the chat,
exist.
swamp sorceress is what my last girlfriend referred to herself as. Yeah, amazing. There's
We
a
love-
big trend. I don't know if that's genuine, but there's a big trend with like modern witchcraft and neo-paganism and stuff that I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you spend a lot of time on like Witch Talk and Witch Tumblr and those kind of like spaces, but that of being like, you know, a swamp or a sea or a mountain or a whatever type of witch,
Uh-huh.
and like identifying with different like elements and things like that, which I think is a really
Wild.
interesting like movement towards trying to like reassert those connections with nature. And it's interesting that it comes with a specialization, but it's definitely like a combination of very fantasy trends to like locate witches and sorceresses and whatever in particular spaces. And I mean that's the same like The Witcher and D&D and all these games have like, you know, swamp hags or like,
Yep.
you know, ocean, like all that you connect with the different space that they're kind of set in, and that influences the type of powers they have. And I think that has played into the way that modern witches are like identifying themselves.
Very much agreed. It's interesting because I'm not actually sure where like the swamp association comes from, because it sure isn't historical, like, full Christianity and non-Christian religious practices. They almost
Yeah,
universally dislike swamps because they suck.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it seems to me like a kind of extension of that idea of the witch as being like isolated from communities, right? So there's this like, yeah, there's this idea that people that were witches were like someone who lived off in the forest and was by herself or by themselves, but usually it's this image of a woman and was very like isolated from society and was this like crazy old witch. And I think some of that develops from, you know, actual like myths and lore and things like Baba Yaga and these kind of, there are stories, right, obviously, of women or witches living out in the forest and in these like isolated spaces. Absolutely, in the medieval and mostly early modern, right, witchcraft trials, like that is so rarely what the people that were actually accused of witchcraft, because what usually happened was, you know, it was neighbors, it was people that behaved within a community in a way that challenged whatever kind of norms, and that's kind of what caused it. But in general, we have this like one of the really thriving tropes of this idea of the witch is this like isolated person, and I guess swamps come with their own kind of image of like being unreachable, being kind of separate from society, because who would want to live in a swamp? And I guess we've kind of conflated that and some of the other like stories about different types of monsters that might live in a swamp with witches. Like that's all I can think of, because it's like you say, it's definitely not Middle Ages. They were not swamp witches.
Exactly. I wonder if part of it may also be, right, swamp as untamed nature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
These like inaccessible, very like wild spaces.
exactly. Okay. So,
People who live in swamps.
this man has spins. Oh boy.
Yeah, for sure. Comment in the chat. It may have to do with folklore of this sort as a metaphor for the beauty and danger of nature, which is becoming a stand-in for bogeyman, fairies, bring harm to children. Yeah, that like danger of nature, for sure. It's like that kind of wild, like untamed natural space. So it makes sense that we've like grouped those together.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Who wouldn't want to live in a swamp? No, I shouldn't say on live on the internet who wouldn't want to live in a swamp and eat children, which is what I was about to say. Who wouldn't want to live in a swamp and do magic? I promise I don't want to eat children. I'm enjoying the ghosts image. They're very like... Are they all the same form? They all look like
Yep.
the same kind of like
Yep.
emaciated masculine human form.
Absolutely. They are all, in fact, that. Though,
Mm.
the revenants here are part of the same, I guess,
So
class,
American.
right? They're both. These are all lost. Yeah, these are all. No, these are all withered. I have to keep track of which random arbitrary name they are referring to. These are all withered, and the ghosts are just a stronger variation of withered. Which is interesting. Don't really know what to do without that.
I saw a comment about history of witchcraft. I'm pretty sure he's a scholar. He's an archaeologist. So, I haven't read that book specifically. I mean, I might have. I don't think I have generic name books, but yeah, I can't give you a direct opinion of the book, but I think the first thing to always check is like, what's the background of the person that is writing it? Are they historically trained? Are they coming from a perspective like ancient history archaeology, which is always going to look at like kind of broad trends, or be looking at either broad trends or like really specific like sites and areas where they've found the kind of information that they're drawing on. So like look where the sources are coming from in the book that you're interested in, because we like to have an idea that we can have one history of magic or one history of witchcraft
Oh god.
in a book, which is impossible, right? So I'm sure it would be interesting, but yeah, just be careful of this idea of like you could write a book that covers all magic of all time.
Literally impossible.
Books on witchcraft. Yeah.
You'll be lucky if you can get a book that gets a history of witchcraft within one culture within a 50-year time period.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That actually is kind of accurately reflecting the culture and what was going on. Interesting comment as well that I think is really important. My issue that someone issue with witchcraft is more that it steals from closed practices, stories, steals from indigenous religions. Yeah, absolutely. So the really interesting thing about modern Wicca that I find that I've kind of been looking at in some ways, but isn't exactly my area, but the way that these traditions and these kind of communities, these modern Wiccans, are creating like a tradition that we kind of need this sense of historical authenticity for something to feel like legitimate in our world a lot of the time. And so there's a lot of very, very new practices and like modern Wicca that comes from kind of Gardner and like it's 20th century, right? Maybe late 19th century. But they present these things with us like guise of the historical. So there's this idea of this is something people have been doing for thousands of years, and that's why we're doing it. This goes back to the ancient pagans. And if you look at a lot of those books that give you spells and things like that, they put this like dual emphasis on an idea of something that is flexible, that is adaptable, that you should do what you want to do with as a modern practitioner, but also something that has a long history. And so what we often see is like very much like cherry picking elements of other cultures. Absolutely, you're right. There's like a really significant racism kind of appropriation element to a lot of modern pagan stuff. Certainly not everything, but that like cherry picks bits of indigenous cultures that they find interesting. And again, this is not a criticism of everything and of all of it, and it's a very human instinct to want to have a historical root to what you're doing. But yeah, this like idea that you need to have a historicity to it, that you have to be able to say this comes from a long line of practices, and like we know that a lot of the time it's not. It's something that's been like created in the last 100 years at best, and but it gives like a comfort that it's got an idea of history, and I think that's where that like urge to draw from all these other religions comes from, and it's definitely not always done in a respectful way.
Yeah. In the same vein, same desire, same underlying mechanism, but video games.
Yeah.
All very much
that's
having a desire
sure.
to be, right. I think this game actually illustrates that urge really nicely. Of, right. None of what in this game is actually historical that you've seen so far. I mean, there's a lot of vague iconographies.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say all of it and none of it. Like,
exactly. I agree with that.
Everything in the game, yeah, everything's drawing on things and then not, and combining it in such a way that just completely removes its context, so it no longer is really historical.
Exactly. And yet, right, it talked about being historical. They're talking about how in the like coming months they want to add a more focus on history and historical figures. But what does that, right?
Oh no.
Firstly, concern. Secondly, the like what? There's no history underneath the history.
Yeah.
Right. These people don't act like they're early modern or Roman or Viking or Zhou Dynasty Chinese. Or anything. They all, right? There's people with Korean names that act exactly like everyone else. There's again, not to say which is not to say that cannot be the case, but rather that they have made no effort to justify that being the case. That everyone has perfectly integrated into a Western society. Because this society is Western.
We're talking about like visual and material accuracy or authenticity.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Basic, right? It's super important. Actually, things that I have not talked about in a while. So, do you want to talk about that history, authenticity, quote unquote debate, or accuracy, authenticity, quote unquote debate?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess it's just right. It just comes down to that idea of like a lot of the kind of origins of studying historical games academically, but also just like what's been discussed in the popular sphere and what video game designers kind of focus on is that idea of something being accurate. And usually when we talk about historical accuracy, we're talking about material accuracy and looking at how does the costume look? Do they use the right weapons? And there's been a shift away from that discourse in some ways lately, which I think is, I mean, we both, I think is really productive.
Oh, yes.
To discussing the way that actually games produce, or all sorts of media produce, a sense of authenticity, and a lot of the time that's done through like material design and the way that the game looks and feels, but in terms of what we actually want to think about in historical games in particular is the way that we can understand ideas about the past or convey meanings, ways of understanding the world, things that are a lot deeper than kind of material aesthetics. And think about the way that we can produce a sense of authenticity, a sense of inhabiting a past world or engaging with past ideas, that is never going to be accurate. We don't know what the world looked like. We don't know any of the kind of exact details. Everything we're doing is built on evidence and using historical imagination anyway. So if we can kind of move away from this idea of having to achieve perfect accuracy, then maybe we can actually get to a place where we can do really interesting things with the past and aim for really interesting, authentic kind of interactions with what the past world was kind of like based on our reconstruction.
Yeah. And actually, an interesting corollary in this game, right, is this is a game that loves its material accuracy, but also giant anime hammer.
Yeah, it's a very
Well,
interesting.
like,
Yeah.
I am so curious as to why that gets processed as, well, not incongruous, but I suppose, uh, more truthfully, uh,
Mm.
I guess both how that is and is not perceived as disruptive to the game's history, and how it leads most people to kind of give a pass. At least the discourse I've seen on Reddit, truly the greatest place for
Mm.
analyzing video games. Uh,
Mm.
but the discourse is, if anyone tries to bring up the history of the game, they're just like, dude, it's got giant anime hammers. Why are you looking at this? Like, why do you care?
Yeah.
No one thinks
I
this is
think
real. It has giant anime hammers.
Yeah, I think in these spaces where they combine both, right? Like there's this really interesting sense that if something in the game is historical, then it has to be accurate. But if it's immediately not historical, then it doesn't. So we got the magic, right? The magic is not going to be accurate. But as soon as you see something like a building, there's this sense that like that needs to be materially accurate because obviously that could have really existed. That's something that looks like whichever kind of period it is. Because you see like the same conversations unfolding about a game that has like dragons,
Yeah.
but people saying, people behave in this way because people were sexist in the Middle Ages, or like they have that weapon because that's the type of like ammo they would have been using for whatever projectile weapon and things like that. So like people can do both in the same space, which I think is excellent. I think is really promising for our ability to make way more interesting games in the future.
Yeah.
But it means we have these conversations where that's the big thing with Game of Thrones, right? That we talk about all the time. That like, oh, they can't, like, of course the women are sexually assaulted because it's based on the Middle Ages. That's what the world was like. But also there are dragons. So there's this like, how can people use that logic when there's these worlds that are so obviously fantasy? But they do, because these elements that seem real have to seem real.
Yes.
And that's how they balance things being able to be so obviously a giant enemy, I think.
Yeah. I agree. Right, that
What is
the
this?
the inauthenticity becomes a shield to excuse the inaccuracy,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating
really
dichotomy to, right? It's just a fascinating dichotomy to have to engage with, and one that I don't necessarily feel like I know how to effectively.
Yeah.
Cause,
Yeah.
right, how do you have a productive conversation where the goalposts can and will move every time you blink in order to accept or reject historical arguments at whatever's convenient?
Yeah. And also, in a space where as soon as anything becomes like a criticism or anything becomes a discussion that's like too, I won't say too deep, but that's that's not kind of coinciding with other people's interpretation or enjoyment or whatever of the game, it becomes, oh, but it's just entertainment.
Exactly.
And then the whole conversation is shut down. It's like, well, I'm not saying that it has to be perfect historically. I'm not saying that it has to be educational. But if you're going to make a game that's doing these things, why can't we still have that discussion without it having to be shut down with that idea,
Agreed. I think that's
Warhammer Witch Hunter, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have answers, but it's such an odd question to have to engage with. And it's not one that exactly. It's not one that's like weakening.
I know.
Right. It's not like it's not like our discussions that have avoided it have actually had much of an impact in public discourse spaces. They haven't. Problem is still just as bad as it was. So.
I mean, yeah, and that's something you like focus and talk on a lot. I think that like there's a real disconnect between wanting to have these conversations in an academic kind of way for historians, and then how it's actually unfolding in the public space, because we don't communicate effectively with actual people in the world. We like to write our articles and whatever, but we need to be doing more of this,
Exactly. I mean, right, the first time anyone did a proper study of what people out in the world think was in 2017 for what counts as accurate and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Hello?
Right.
And there's been a couple
Yeah.
more I found since then. But yeah,
Yeah.
2017 was the first major one. And all the academics were like, oh wow, we've been needing this for like 15 years. I was like, guys, hello?
Yeah, and like, it just means that academics have made so many assumptions about what the general public think and what they want and what gamers and like people in gaming spaces think and want. And so many times I've read things that just seem so dismissive of like honestly the intelligence of people playing games. And
Yep.
like actually, I mean, this stream and the comments in the stream are right, like a testament to people want interesting games. People are critical. They're able to think in really diverse ways about games. We are assuming all these things about the way that people engage with these texts, which are so inaccurate
Oh, yeah.
and reductive to the experiences of players.
Yep.
Like, we should be listening to what people who actually play these games and make these games are saying.
Yeah.
And what they want and how they interpret things so much more. Yeah.
And game developers are way ahead of us on that. At least the ones who know what they're doing are way ahead of us. Just actually finding people ways to interact with community, either on dev forums or through streamers or through other platforms.
Yes, selection bias. I know that. Sorry.
We do have a significant amount of selection bias. My community is great.
Yeah, obviously.
But
just one example.
The premise is sound, even if the sample in question is abnormal.
I said this was an example, not that this was representative.
It's a deal then.
Interested in medieval stuff. Yes, literally, I have friends that got into, like, it's such a, I can't say it's a slippery slope, but you get into, like, you play a little bit of Skyrim and then suddenly you're going to, like, medieval fairs and you've bought a history book and, like,
it is a bit of a
you're
slippery
really
slope.
interested in it. Because, like, you want to engage in these worlds because we find them interesting. And often traditional ways of learning about the past, and especially about the Middle Ages, can be really exclusive, really exclusionary.
Yeah.
Not everyone can just pick up a history book and kind of interpret what that is. And also, academic history books, so expensive.
Oh, God.
So, that's not always accessible. So, like, so many people are getting into games because that's a way to engage with this past. It's fascinating.
It's the same price as a book and significantly more enjoyable.
Yeah, and the amount of time you're going to get out of that.
Actually, heck, this game was $40. I could buy two copies of this game and still cost less than a single academic history book.
Recent book. Yep.
Which is why it's like, thank God for people who are finally getting there, like Dr. Matthew Gabriel and David Perry. Thank God for people like them leading the charge on the academic front. Because their book is magnificent. The Bright Ages is honestly a magnificent book.
I haven't read it yet. I know it's on my list.
Yeah, I only got it recently, but it has been pretty good. So, right, getting good single volume histories is a big deal. Because those are important as sort of an intermediary between, like, right, truly popular depictions and popular histories and podcasts, and then super serious academic stuff.
If anyone's looking for other books as well that kind of break down, like, the tropes and the stereotypes about the Middle Ages, the Devil's Historian.
Yeah.
Historians? I don't remember if it's plural. Awesome book
I think it's plural.
from the people that run Public Medievalist. It's I found it just a really easy read. I set it as part of the course readings for a course that I ran in 2020. Like, I just found it really accessible, but not in a way that was like dumbing anything down, which sometimes books that are designed to be accessible to a general audience.
Yep.
It was really good. Where are we now? What are we doing now? We're looking at a map.
Huh. I was going to show off my copy of Devil's Historians, but I don't actually have it on me. Which is wild. So,
I can show it off.
yeah. I have Medievalism, Politics, and Mass Media, which is Andrew
Nice.
Elliott's next book, but I don't have
Wait, hang on.
Devil's
I don't know
Historians
where
on
the
hand.
frame is.
Yeah, you're in frame.
Am I in frame?
Yep.
Got the little like circle. I'm trying to make sure that I'm in the right spot. There you go. Great book.
Highly
It's very easy
recommend.
to spot on your bookshelf because the spine is bright yellow.
That does help, yes. Oh yeah. Also, yeah, a Fantasy Hero's Guide to the Real Middle Ages just came out recently. That's
Yeah, I've heard about that. I haven't read it yet.
Kate Stevenson's new book.
Yeah.
I've heard good things, and then Eleanor Yanaga just did a graphic novel for the Middle Ages,
Cool.
which is a freaking great choice. Because really, I think the lesson here is, for education side, is people need to be doing stuff in every medium available. Because there isn't a perfect medium for doing history, and there isn't a perfect, I don't know, there isn't a perfect solution to the problems of getting the public broadly interested in history that does not fit into sound bites, and that doesn't
Yeah.
fit easy authenticity, right? That actually challenges our discourse a little bit. And there just isn't there isn't an easy way to make that happen, and so the only answer I see is just everyone needs to be doing everything in every medium they've got available.
Yeah, and I think because a lot of what I'm interested in as a historian, like what we teach, what I teach at uni to my history classes, right? The first thing that we need to kind of be communicating with the general public and with people who've only done like high school history, which is very like, here are the facts that you're going to memorize.
It's so bad.
So what we actually need, what we're trying to like communicate is actually a way of thinking about the past as opposed to like facts about the past. So thinking about, you can have a critical perspective. We want you to, here's some evidence, let's interpret it together. Or there is no one single narrative about the past. Those kind of ideas are much, like they're easy to do, I guess, in their own soundbite. But not necessarily in a way that is going to hook people into an interesting history. So if you're trying to like connect with people and tell historical narratives and things in like short kind of soundbitey ways, but also make sure that you include that general thinking framework as well in terms of how you want people to interact with that content, that I think is where it's really hard.
Yeah.
Also, I see the comment in the chat about wanting the book recommendations in the Discord. We will make sure that
Yes.
we do that.
We can absolutely make sure that happens at the end.
I can try and think about witchy ones if people want to read about witchy history.
Yeah. I mean, always yes.
It's
Just on principle, yes.
tricky line. Yeah.
I know of no one who doesn't want that.
High school history should be so much better. Oh my gosh. Definitely in Australia.
So many feelings.
It's exhausting.
Trust me, the US is
Thinking
not
about-
better.
Yeah. It's just, this whole idea of like, here is the story of the past that already exists, you're going to learn it. Which is the opposite of what historians do. So yeah, there's like, it's really important space to be breaking down that idea. Like, it's the first thing that I have to do with my first year undergrads when I teach is like, please, you don't,
Well-
if I say anything that you disagree with, like, disagree with me, put your hand up. This is subjective. Like, let's talk about it. and get them out of the like, yeah, memorize things. Here are the facts. Here is the version of history that you have to know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh gosh. I mean, there's
And
a
I
whole lot
think-
of theory underlying why that is, but it is just so frustrating to have to deal with. Because I think, actually, I wonder if that affects why there's such an easy focus on, right, if it looks right, that's all that matters. Right, that makes authenticity, because that is the past.
Yeah, I think games have such a potential to be really interesting historical spaces. I don't think we're there yet, but
I don't think we're there yet, and I think
I think we could be.
I think the big challenge with that is just that making games is really freaking hard.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And
I know
takes a huge team, and to make these kind of big games.
Exactly.
Huge team, huge number of skills, different skills that are going into that.
that are
yeah,
very
for
rarely
sure.
good historical research skills. Right, there's almost no overlap between ability to do good writing, good game writing, good coding, good animation, good asset creation, good marketing, and good historical research. And that's a
Just
thing
so-
historians, I think, have a bad habit of underestimating. I think there's a really bad habit of underestimating it. Just how different those skill sets are, and how hard it is to be good at any one of those skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. And to like transition from one space to another, like if you have one skill set but you want to be kind of moving into a different like element of game design, or a different the kind of historical perspective that you're bringing to that, like it's a skill to like have to learn. You can't just pick up a book and then be learning that new thing. You have to actually like learn. They're all skills. Even history, like historical thinking is a skill. I just wanted to comment. I saw a question about Malevolent Nurture, which is a book from the 90s, and I just thought, on the note of like books on witchy books, that people may not know too much about, the kind of like historiography of witchcraft histories, and so just to like very quickly crash course on that.
Yeah, do it.
But basically, what happened with kind of academic understandings of witchcraft is it was a really male-dominated space, like masculine kind of historians who were approaching these stories about the past in a particular way. And in the 70s and 80s, sort of late 60s, 70s, 80s, we see this really interesting surge of feminist historians, feminist scholars, feminist activists interested in the history of witchcraft. And during that period of really kind of tumultuous political situation for gender, and a real need for, and I mean, I am not using this as a analogy, but this is the one that was used. And the phrase was a Holocaust of our own. And it was this need for like a joint past, a collective suffering that kind of brings together women in this example, and this idea of, it's called the burning times myth, right, which is this idea that there was this mass persecution of women specifically during the early modern period, that women were hunted for being women, and that's what witchcraft hunting was all about. That it was to do with women's craft, and one of the big stories that came out of that was that it was midwives who were being persecuted because there was a newly developing male field of medicine, and they wanted to push midwives and healers and female healers out of the picture, so they called them witches and had them killed. And that certainly in some examples may be accurate, but it is absolutely not the entire picture of what happened during the witchcraft trials period of European history. But it was that idea was kind of formed in the 60s and 70s by feminist scholars that needed this narrative to push their own kind of political agenda, to be pushing for rights and pushing for bodily autonomy and women's like control over their own bodies, especially in a medical sphere. And so that narrative became really popular. So if you see almost any history books that are written during the like late 60s through 80s about witchcraft, be really conscious of the perspective, the political perspective that they were putting forward, because it's a very specific, I don't want to say the word bias as a historian, but very specific perspective and purpose that those texts are serving.
Yeah.
Once you get into like the 90s and then early 2000s, we see that perspective being shifted a lot. And the numbers, the change in numbers, I mean, in the sort of 70s, there's this narrative that like 1 million women were killed. And then we see the actual like stat. Right? Yeah, there's really massive estimates about how many people were killed in the witchcraft trials, and it's absolutely not true. It's like I can't even remember the like main. It's like 400 to 600,000. But also they're not women. Like I think, you know, somewhere between, depending on the area that you're looking at, like between like 10 and 30% of people who were persecuted or accused of witchcraft weren't women. So it's certainly not a story that is just about gender. Midwives, like a lot of the time, were involved in the persecution of other women because they were considered to be having like the knowledge about this medical practice, and so they could like identify witches. So midwives were definitely not always the ones being persecuted. Sometimes they were persecuting.
Hooray.
So yeah, it's like so much more of a diverse history than was formulated for a very particular purpose in the 60s and 70s. So books like Malevolent Nurture and some of those texts are like coming out of that history and starting to write more nuanced gender histories of witchcraft trials, very much in response to what had happened in the few decades previous. And so I think Deborah Willis's book is a great example. It's talking about the way that like women were like also accusing and on the kind of other side of that history. But yeah, just a kind of note about the type of histories that you're reading, to be really careful about any book that is published through the like 60s through kind of 80s that have that perspective of that it was a mass persecution of women very particularly. And again, not that isn't like, some of it isn't possible and some of it wasn't going on. It's just that idea of like they like to paint it as a kind of complete picture as opposed to one kind of element of a really complicated historical period. Yeah. That's my spiel about reading about witchcraft in academic texts.
It's a good spiel.
And also, yeah, be conscious of, you know, more recent texts as well, especially by sometimes male scholars, but also female scholars that like shit on that period of history too, like that kind of 60s and 70s period, because obviously, you know, I think they had a very valid reason to be looking for that kind of history, and a lot of the work they did was still really important to like uncover stories about witchcraft and have a different perspective and all those sorts of things. So it's not to say that that entire period of historical work is not valid or is not contributing something. It's just like, you know, think about the way that you interpret that information.
Exactly.
What are we doing now apart from fighting alligators?
Mostly just fighting alligators.
Okay, cool.
Actually, specifically is trying to figure out how to get past all these guys in order to keep fighting alligators.
Cool.
I need to kill one more alligator and then we'll move on to other stuff, because... And then I think we will enter out to menu, see if we can find the main quest, see if we can figure out this weather magic thing, because... Weirdly, right, one place where this game has absolutely no... Right, specifically anyone who does magic type things is unconnected to the weird manipulation of the weather. That's the corruption. And that's like the one thing where, like, if we're looking at, you know, having a force that enables very, well, popular ideas of magical practice, but still ideas of magical practice.
Until we get to Florida.
It would be weather manipulation is like the big thing. That's like the thing that witches get accused of doing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what set off like a main, I guess, some of the main period of witchcraft trials and witchcraft like hunting in the early modern period is Scottish King James coming back across from picking up his bride, his future bride, and traveling by boat and having this really like tumultuous, horrible weather and storms that were really, really dangerous, and then getting back and being like, it was the witches, they did this to me. And then he wrote, oh my god, not Malleus Maleficarum.
Demonology?
Demonology, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, like so many of that, like so many of those kind of moments that are like, the natural world did something horrible to me. Obviously, it must be someone doing it on purpose.
Exactly.
Right? It can't just be chance that the natural world happened to have a storm this day.
Exactly. It never would be the case that the weather is just bad. Because we all know
Gotta be
there
a
is
plot.
someone in charge of everything, and that someone likes me specifically, and therefore would never give me bad weather. Nope. It is quite sad because that stays true and across, I know, all across Northern Europe. It's like weather manipulation is the big thing. And in Finland, I know the late medieval, early modern witch trials are often bad weather leads to harvest failures, leads to let's start pointing fingers at someone.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like really interesting, I think, histories in terms of like Scandinavian countries and like Northern Europe and like the witch trials and the way that some of the traditions that are seen as bad and like evil magical practices are connected to like native communities as well. And there's like a lot of there's sometimes a lot of overlap in those contexts in like the 17th century. Actually, if anyone's looking for a novel that I thought was really good, historical novel called The Mercies. I don't remember the name of the author. I feel like Hargrave or something similar to that is her surname. That is about yeah, exactly. There you go. The Nordic countries tied up with Sami religion. Yeah. So it was about early 17th century witchcraft trial of sorts in the kind of context of that, to do with a big storm. Yes, thank you. Someone in the chat is quicker than me. I should have but you probably remember it. Yeah, it was a really good book. I read that last year. I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
No, not even last year, year before. We talked about it on a podcast that I was doing at the time.
Look, there's before plague time, in which time is measured in years, and then there's plague time, in which is...
There's plague time.
What month of March is it?
Yeah. And honestly, I moved cities in February 2020. Very end of January 2020. Worst possible time. So, like, my whole brain is like, I moved here and now there's plague. It's
and
all
then stuff happens, and then it's the present day.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I'm going to get attacked by...
How far can you go into this water?
Yes. I can't swim, but I can walk underwater.
And you can just breathe?
No, I will drown if I...
Oh, I see breath, yep. There we go.
Oh good. I got far enough out of the water to be okay, and I am just outrunning this alligator. Okay, I'm not quite out. I'm damage boosting. It's tech. This is the worst. This is dumb. The fact that they haven't coded swimming into this game yet is possibly the worst thing. Because you just can't swim, and your footsteps are on top of the water.
That's so stupid.
It's so bad. I know it's not... It shouldn't be important, but it kind of is.
I see there was a comment about Greenland as well. I don't know a huge amount about that history, but I definitely... I mean, I think it's similar to a lot of other spaces that, yeah, the persecution of like rituals and belief in spirits and things like that is very connected to like native beliefs as well.
And
right?
The answer is yes, there was absolutely enormous, horrifying persecution of West Greenlandic peoples in Greenland since the colonization, on the grounds that they were the people who got rid of the Christian Vikings. Right, there is actually a claim to specifically that heritage and that legacy as being a problem.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not good. Okay. So, what's next? Oh yeah, I just need to kill a bunch of guardians out here. That's fine. This is easy enough to do, and then we will exit the menu and figure out where we are supposed to go. Because I'm hoping reloading the game will spawn the marker. That would be nice.
Fingers crossed.
I would love if we could actually see where I'm supposed to go. That sounds very enjoyable and not at all like something this game would do, because that would be fun. Why would the game do fun things? No, I'm mostly kidding. The game is not unenjoyable, but it's enjoyable in the very turn your brain off and go for it way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean,
It's such
a
a missed
number of
opportunity.
games.
It's such a missed opportunity. Because, right, there's so many interesting histories right here. And so many interesting things that are not historically attested, but historically plausible, that could have been right here. Like, I mean, we've talked with a bunch of them for, just witchcraft and some of its portrayals, could have been options available, as stories to tell, and yet the game doesn't actually tell those stories.
What's happening with our swamp sorceress?
She was... Oh, wait, that's actually a great question. Where did the swamp sorceress
Did I
go?
miss that?
Did we already finish the swamp? No. I just haven't... Wait, that's not the swamp sorceress. Where is the swamp sorceress? I think we... Oh,
I was
the
watching, but also not paying attention briefly while I was talking, not gonna lie.
the swamp sorceress, I think, turned into a evil ghost that we killed.
That was the... Okay, cool. Cool,
Yes,
wow,
I think,
was not paying attention.
I think that was...
Big
I also was
ADHD
not paying...
brains.
No. I'm the one playing the game, and I also forgot to pay attention to the swamp sorceress we thought was cool enough to go check out. So, this is a shared, turn our brain off moment. But yeah, I think she turned into a ghost that spewed poison at us.
Cool. Cool.
Classic.
Of course. Yes, I'll...
Because, yeah, there is... Right, I'm still trying to, like, process this game's vague medievalism. After 50-something hours playing it, I'm still, like, I still don't know what's going on here. In a very meaningful way. It makes it so hard to understand just what are all the pieces that are moving here.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the really interesting questions is like, can we call this game
Medieval.
You know, how much medieval do you have to have with an infusion of all these other things? Like, what's the line about how much medieval imagery or medieval idea, or not even medieval, but just the idea of fantasy, which we have conflated with medievalism, for it to sort of be meaningfully medieval in some way. I just love these skeletons. This is so funny.
Aren't they kind of very silly?
I kind of love them, to be honest.
I can make you not love them. They are formerly, supposedly in lore, these are not the ancients themselves. These are the reanimated remains of people formerly enslaved by the ancients.
Oh, I hate them now. Yeah.
I told you I can make you hate them.
You did it very quickly. I wasn't expecting that. Cool.
Yeah. Just when you thought we could escape the horrifying colonialisms underlying the game.
Yeah,
Surprise.
it got worse. I was like, look at the cool purple magic as you crush some skellies. Mm-mm.
Yeah, but no, they put in lore about them, and that was possibly the worst possible decision they could have made.
Just wanted them to be little skellies. Here we are.
Yep.
Oh no, now it sucks.
Yep. I don't know if these taskmasters... Oh, God. You have no legs. Stop. I don't know if the taskmasters are supposed to be ancient, or they're just also enslaved people that were raised up to a slightly higher position, and therefore are given helmets.
Either way, bad.
Either way, bad. And I'm guessing the latter. I'm guessing that this falls under the trends of, like, Roman slaveries. Wherein enslaved people were also the taskmasters for...
Yeah. I like the comment, sometimes Amazon would be better off keeping their mouth shut and just letting it be a dumb game. And I think, like, one of the things about games is that the way that they kind of do both is you always are going to have people playing a game who do not read shit. Like, they don't read any of the lore that they don't have to read.
Oh, not even slightly.
They're in it to whack things. That's what's going to be fun for them, that type of player, you know. And then you have people that are going to read every single thing that they pick up, and then a vast spectrum in between. And so, like, a lot of people can engage with a game on a really surface level and play the fun hitting skeletons game without engaging with that sort of deeper lore. But because there is that huge spectrum of people that want to play the game, you want to, like, cater to both, so you have these kind of, like, hidden in a way, or collectible, like, lore things that you can learn if you want to, that gives it depth. Like, that they kind of do both. So for someone who doesn't go and read that, they're just going to remain skellies.
Yeah, they are.
Can just hit.
Also, that makes, honestly, that makes interpretation a little bit harder.
Yep.
Because, right, when everyone's played experience is radically different, and often in ways that elide things that we think are probably pretty important. Like, what do you actually... Oh, gosh. There's still so many people here. Oh, good. He's running away. I don't know why he's running away. He ran away to literally right next to me. That's alright. I killed enough of them. We're good. Let's get out of here. Okay. Where is the closest...
super great question.
Where is the
Is there a
next
sort of
closest?
trope of huge ancient empire on the back of slavery in fantasy based on a sort of 60s era misconception of ancient Egypt? Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there is a weird attitude toward in like fantasy genre stuff. I think like if you look at D&D, that has so much appropriated like ancient Egypt stuff towards that as being like a kind of free for all space, because like it's ancient Egypt, it's so long ago, and it's so interesting and cool, and I think a lot of people forget to picture people from Africa as not white. And so like the way that people appropriate ancient Egypt with an idea of like slavery as being something we can just talk about because it's ancient, and of course slaves built the pyramids, like it's fine, as opposed to maybe a slightly more nuanced approach to like Native American representation and colonization, I guess.
No. Who would put
Probably
nuance
not, but in some ways.
Right, remember they're not called Native American, and therefore this isn't just reenacting that violence. That's all it takes.
I forgot.
If you don't call them by their actual real-world names, or names that have been assigned to them, as the case may be, then it's not them, and no parallels can possibly be drawn. Sadly, a take I have seen about this game online.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
We love that.
Wow, look at that.
It's just like there can be sexual violence because history, but also there can be dragons. Same
Also, there
logic.
can be dragons, yeah.
If it's useful to justify what you want, then it's historically accurate. But if it's not, then it's just fantasy.
Exactly. Also, amusingly, the most
Yeah, we've
the
named
most
our game
comical
New
thing
World.
on the ancient Egypt is ancient Egypt as empire built on slavery trope is that there is an ancient empire that is built on slavery, and its name is Rome. And yet, Rome, right? It's only like in the last 20 years or so that pop culture has even vaguely sometimes acknowledged that maybe the Romans did slavery.
Yeah, well, I mean, our whole like Western world, right, is built on that like Renaissance Enlightenment idea of the glory of the Roman Empire and like restoring all of these things from ancient cultures, meaning like the classical world, post Middle Ages. And I don't think we've completely undone all of that in our culture at all. So it's
Yeah,
not
agreed.
surprising. Yeah.
Okay, I could kill more animals, or I could now check into the inn, reload the game, see if we can get the spawn point for our next actual quest. See, because I would like to make a bit of progress with that before we finish up, because at some point I've got to get high enough level in order to go actually survive being in the generically China-themed area. That is a thing in this video game. And I am not there yet, so we are going to not get stuck in the corner and instead find the inn right here.
It takes a certain kind to travel through the fen.
Oh, I'm really enjoying the purple, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just like purple.
purple is a good color. Right, these winter colors are very good.
Oh, do the banners and stuff change?
Well, when
in
the
different
season,
seasons?
for their events, yeah,
Mm.
I think. I'm actually not sure if these ones will change. I don't know if these are part of the event or not.
Mm.
I think the poinsettias are. So, no. We will be right back. We are going to exit to menu, and then we are going to reload, see if the quest marker spawns in. Also, this gives a chance for a thing we don't normally see. The Aladdin on the loading screens.
Oh, yeah! Oh, it's gone.
It's gone. It was there for a second,
I was like...
but I have not managed to get a
Someday.
clear enough picture of it in order to be able to actually
Oh.
check what the Aladdin
I
says.
have to screenshot it with it loaded really high quality.
Exactly. And the problem is, if you got a
Your
PC
shoes
high
are
enough to
really-
load it at high quality, it loads too fast and replaces it with these images.
Ah,
Which are nice, but I'd rather have Aladdin.
that's so funny. It's gonna have to get on there like ready to screenshot it really fast.
Exactly. Neat. So, objectives, the storm source. Can I... The storm source? No? No? It just doesn't exist. Alright, so where
Oh,
is
well.
the... Where
Next
was the...
time.
Where was the storm? The storm was somewhere over this way. So, I assume it's not... I'm going to assume it's out this way because there's nothing here. And that's usually a good... It's either right here, or it's way out here. So we'll try here first, and then we'll not die to all the Angry Earth. Which I still can't believe that that's their name for it. And then when we don't die to those, we will be able to check out that thing at our leisure. Also, yeah, do you like this abomination? I heard you earlier say, what the heck is this thing?
I did. I just. It's great. I find monster design very interesting.
Monster design is so cool.
Mm.
Right? Because it's so telling. Just
Oh, yeah.
on- right, I mean, for a whole bunch of monster theory has been written on the idea of,
Yeah.
oh yeah, right, monsters as reflection of societal fears.
Mm-hmm.
But
For sure, we
also,
learn more about the norms of society by looking at what they deliberately want to call outside of that, what they want to call monstrous.
mhm.
Definitely a thing with studying witches and thinking about like the monstrous feminine in terms of
Oh,
like
yeah.
why we consider someone who like why do we have this like association between the idea of the witch and the idea of like cannibalism and eating children and things like that.
Yep.
There's this idea of like a woman who doesn't naturally fall into those ideas about like motherhood and childbirth and things would be obviously must be taken to the extreme of monstrosity of eating them instead. That's
Exactly.
anyway, much bigger discussion, but very interesting.
It
Irrelevant
is.
to what you're doing in this game right
What?
now.
Nah, it's totally fine. The thing that's just interesting about in modernity, though, is that there's such a well-developed, like, classification of sets of monsters, thank you, D&D, that I feel like it's almost hard to use the same theories that work well in pre-modernity in modernity. I get the sense that it just doesn't
Yeah.
quite actually work the way we want it to. Because there are too many too
Yeah, I think-
many monsters, I guess. Too many things are monsters.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think one thing that's really like important to think about with games is like a lot of traditional theories of monstrosity rely on an element of something being unknowable. Like you can't understand it. It's on the edges of society. It can't be understood in the terms of the normal categories of society, therefore it exists outside of them, therefore it's monstrous, like this kind of idea. But in order to create a game, you literally have to have a set of statistics for every monster that you're going to face. You have to be able to know it in a way that really defies a lot of those ideas about monstrosity and culture and the way that we like understand monstrosity. Is really interesting, like work on that in game studies. But yeah, just thinking about like if monstrosity relies on some element of like not being able to comprehend and understand it in our terms, but a game relies on things being put into the same set of calculable like data. How can we have monstrosity in that space? It's really I don't know. It's a question I don't know how to grapple with exactly yet.
Neither do I, but it is fascinating though, right? You get like all the aesthetics of, well, vampiric monstrosity especially, right? That abomination is clearly like bat-like. So you get a genuine monster in the spin-offs of very, very clearly known and accepted, this is a monster figure for Victorian sensibilities, being ruled into something that just is like vaguely, very faint body horror.
Yeah, I definitely think that like that disconnect between aesthetics and mechanics is something that like you see the monstrosity in the visual design or in the way that the world looks and what you're supposed to sort of see and interact with, but then like the mechanics of what the character or that non-play character, the monster, does is like separate in a way from that. That's the kind of knowable.
It's odd. Yeah.
Yeah, and like comment as well there in the chat about agency. Yeah, and that's another element. Like, you usually the monsters that you face in a game, especially these types of games, like you're supposed to be able to fight. You're supposed to be able to interact with. And if you lose, it's not because you always couldn't fight it. It's usually because you didn't have the skills or the materials, and you should try again. You should reload it. Whereas a lot of traditional like horror kind of conceptions of monstrosity, like you don't want to engage with it, you want to run away. It's supposed to be a spooky story in the night that you don't engage with. I think that's something about The Witcher, about the Crones of Crookback Bog, that is why I didn't find that storyline like works very well actually in a game. I mean, people might disagree with me. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't know. But because they're set up as this like huge like folklore with this really interesting like dynamic, and then like their relationship with the community, like they're evil, but also the community rely on them, and etc. Um, in theory, they should be like terrifying, but they're really not very hard to kill once you get into the actual combat sequence with them with Siri. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I played it on a bunch of different difficulties to kind of like understand how that encounter works, and like I guess it gets harder the way that everything does, but like they're not the overwhelming, terrifying, monstrous enemy that they are made out to be narratively. And I found that contrast, that like conflict between those, that like what we call ludonarrative dissonance, but it just means like a disconnect between the story and the mechanics, um, was really jarring for me. Like I was like, well, now she's just dead on the floor, and she's like kind of lumpy, and she rolled over in like honestly pretty like embarrassingly, like it you know, it wasn't like dignified. These monsters that are supposed to be so horrific,
Uh-huh.
and then they weren't. And I think that was something games like grapple with, and haven't really worked out a good way to do in a lot of the time. Some have for sure, but if it's an enemy that you have to be able to encounter and fight, how do you maintain a story of it being like truly terrifying
Exactly. Especially
if you
in
can always beat it?
if everything is difficult, right?
Mm.
Every monster is this super, monstrous entity that you're supposed to be scared of and fight. Also, it's a video game where you can level up, and someone has to be in the early game. Right, it's just a requirement. Someone has to be in the early game because you need gameplay, and if your game is fighting things, you need a thing to fight in the early game. So someone's going to be
Sure.
built out to be a big deal, and then you roll up and they're level 10, and you're like, what?
Yeah, that's also very true. Yeah.
Well,
A comment in the chat as well about
completely
the
lost.
Witcher as opposed to witches, which ERS, the monster hunters of that series, monstrous in their own right. Absolutely, that's something they play with really interestingly.
Yeah, I think that's the case where they do it the best, is that the Witchers are honestly the best monsters of the whole thing, because they are exactly as horrifying as you expect them to be.
Yeah, and also it works on both a mechanical and a narrative level. Like I think they match up. So like when you're exploring the world as Geralt, there are people that don't want to interact with you. You know, you have to like negotiate for money. There's like lots of ways that the actual functioning of what you can do in the game matches up with the story about like who he is and his place in the world. Like sometimes it doesn't, for convenience, but there's enough in the mechanics of it that make it fit. And I think that's something that really impacts the way that a game can be interpreted, is like how that the mechanics and the narrative line up, and that's really significant for history. When we see these really shallow material representations of historical elements, and that doesn't match up with any of the meanings and the mechanics of the game, that's where it doesn't work.
Agreed. Very much agreed, because, right, to complement the game and then immediately nitpick again, right, it does have gestures towards the idea of there's a diverse early modern world space, right? Even in, I've been seeing more of them, more people of color, more people from any culture other than, European and European descent cultures. Right, but in like even the very first area, there's someone whose name would suggest that they are Korean.
Yeah.
And you see people of color, you see Chinese people, Japanese people, all sometimes occupying problematic or Orientalist tropes, but often not. But they all talk and act perfectly integrated into a Western dominant culture space. And so the diversity feels superficial. Right, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of people coming together. There's a bunch of white people with with a handful of people who were forced to integrate to survive.
Yeah. Again, it's that same issue of like, you know, we want that diversity, we want that interesting mix of cultures and that representation of the fact that the world was never in like black and white distinct categories, that actually like especially in the early modern world, in the medieval world, there was so much overlap. It's like people that think that all the Vikings were white, and you're like, huh, have you heard of trade? So there's like, we want that, but at the same time, a lot of games that try and do it, we end up with a really like tokenistic integration of like small elements or visual design or whatever, or names, into what is otherwise just one kind of monotonous, homogenous kind of culture. So it doesn't actually work. But it'd be great if anyone knows any games in the chat to suggest, or if anyone's a game designer, like think about this, to get more games that manage a really authentic and interesting, diverse world. I think part of the key is probably just going to be more diverse, like, design teams, which we're seeing some of, but I still think we see a lot of games that are designed by like one kind of type of group of person for the most part, and so like more work between different design studios from different parts of the world and things like that might be able to achieve some more diverse games that kind of actually integrate those elements more. I'm not gonna lie, I love these mushroom guys. This is cool.
These mushroom guys are quite cool. These mushroom
I'm
guys
not
are
actually
also
fighting them, so like,
super annoying.
maybe they're horrible. Yeah.
No, I don't hate them. They're just super annoying.
They sort of feel like they serve a bit of a like, oh, and then you've got to fight something to get to the next bit purpose.
They very much do.
Yeah.
I expect we'll see more of them
A waste.
inside. Right, inside the expedition whenever I get the chance to do that. Though the problem is, right, these guys attack super buffly, and my companion here is doing literally nothing helpful.
They've run away. Yeah.
He's level 45. He could wreck this guy with me.
There you go.
He did it. He stopped doing it. Honestly, sir. And I bet by the time we get up top, the first guy will have respawned? No?
No. There you go.
Hooray. Storm wall barrier.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Just need to get inside here.
Okay.
Ooh, there's a thing. Hello, document. The Lepus research camp was destroyed last night. The lesser storm wall sustained a sudden energy surge that caused it to explode in size and force, cause unknown. I awoke in the wreckage of my tent and escaped with nothing more than the pajamas on my back. So much valuable research data was destroyed. It's my understanding that Dr. Fawn, who was killed in the Stormwall flare, is now recommending against re-establishing the camp, claiming safety concerns. Not to question my colleague's commitment or her courage, but aren't a few deaths a small price to pay to uncover the truth behind this phenomenon? I'll leave that for the ethics panel to decide. So there are ethics panels, and he just doesn't like them. Dang it, chat! I thought we were Scientists United against ethics panels. What do you mean they have ethics panels here?
I don't know if you've seen in the chat, they're redeeming changing of the gear. Yep, cool.
To be just totally fair. Anything other than hammer. Okay, so what am I supposed to do
That was
now?
very interesting, though.
I killed the thing. What do I do next? Storm's source. I just need to talk. Oh, I just need to go talk to him again. All right.
A lot
Goodbye.
of eras of history are filled with silly polearms, to be honest. It's a
Silly
tragedy that
polearms
they're
are
not
a time-honored tradition.
incorporated into more like genuine drama kind of history films. They're all like, here is my one sword. I'm like, come on.
Exactly. We could
There's
have
so many
silly
cooler
polearms.
weapons. Let me find. Yeah. That actually is a broad, you know what, that extends to a much broader kind of comment about medievalism and like taking itself too seriously. So many media things, but like especially games, in the way that they're like originally made, are very much pitched at this like very serious world, and it's all very grungy and real and
Yep.
and that misses like all of the fun of medieval narratives.
Literally
And
all.
so
of it.
I love seeing like ridiculous mods in games and people bringing in like so many random like things, even from the modern world, like certainly not like historically accurate things, but you know, chickens and all the different things people like to spawn with mods in games.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really great thing that games have the potential to enable, and hopefully there's more of that in the future of gaming, that like people bring in like silliness and have fun with history, because history is a world is the same as the world that we live in now. We're not all like boring people that talk in very serious voices and thou and thine and blah blah blah, you know. So
You sure?
like actually playing with it and enjoying real, as in silly and ridiculous elements
Absolutely.
of the past is cool.
Yeah, and that was actually something I was gratified to see. The folks at Sony Santa Monica seem to be ahead of the curve on this one.
I wonder when Hazel actually.
Right, because as soon as God of War came out on PC, Corey Balrog was like, yeah, you guys can mod it.
You mean
That's
as
great, yeah.
the swamp? Well, now that you say that,
Which is pretty neat. Big fan.
Yeah. I wish creators would just see it more though. Like I wish creators would have more fun with the ridiculousness of the Middle Ages
Agreed.
in particular. Like I don't know if everyone has seen Green Knight, the new film, but I found the parts of that I mean I think it missed. I have so many opinions about it, but
Good.
I think it missed a lot of the playful elements. But some of the parts that I thought were the best and the most like, you know, genuine to the way that medieval stories were
Yeah.
like the ridiculous things that made no sense, you know, when he's talking to the ghost in the house, and like the way that conversation had such a good dynamic of actual like medieval romances, because you listen to it and you're like, what are you saying? And like that's like reading medieval poems is like that.
Agreed.
You know?
Or, literally anything with a talking fox.
Yeah,
Literally
right?
anything about
Stop
that is good.
making things grungy and serious. Give me more talking animals.
Exactly. Note for this game. Please give us more talking animals. It would right? I don't need to talk to person standing still number 732. But if one of them is a fox, I'm going to talk to that fox.
You gotta talk to the fox. What a name. Samuel, it's gone. I was about to say it out loud.
Samuel Worthington
something.
Bloodgood the
Bloodgood. Fantasy name generator.
Exactly. Okay.
Love it.
And he's giving us more hunting things to do. We're not going to do those, because we have, firstly, more level ups to do.
You are a noble soul.
And secondly, we have main story quests to turn in. Hooray! There are no mounts in this game, though, so we've got to walk there the old-fashioned way. I'm actually going to take the road this way, I think. Yeah, that works better. Because the problem is, right, there is the bear garden, written in very poor Latin, in between me and him, and the bears in that bear garden are scary. Because their angry earth has blighted the bears, and so the bears are made of rock. And
Of course they are.
the bears are made of rock, and that is just bad news for everyone. Just don't recommend. Solidly do not recommend that. But yeah, unfortunately, right, I feel like if this was just one area of the game, we would have seen a really nice bit of, like, diversity, different styles of quests. The problem is that, right, fundamentally the whole game looks like this. It's just different layers of dark and spooky.
Yeah, it is very similar. Wherever we're running, there's a lot of the same, like, dead trees and the same
And,
vibes.
I mean, we've been in Weaver's Fen the whole time, right? We've been in the swamp for literally the entire stream today. But with one notable exception that I wish was not an exception,
What are we looking at on the right, sorry?
Giant ancient
Oh,
statue.
it's a statue. Gotcha.
Yep.
Sorry, continue.
No worries.
Interrupt you.
That's all right. Right, with the exception of the generically Chinese-themed area, which, yikes. Everywhere looks pretty much the same. It's just, okay, some places actually have a day-night cycle that makes a noticeable difference. And other places have a few more cliffs. And otherwise, everywhere is fundamentally kind of similar. So, it ends up not actually feeling all that exciting. Because
Yeah.
it's pretty. It's reasonably pretty. It's just... It's almost too coherent of a world space. Which makes the one time when it's not at all a coherent world space very frustrating.
Yeah, especially when they're meshing in so many different things to try and make, like, you know, there's all these different factions and there's all these different types of monsters that you face, and they've drawn inspiration from like 50 different cultures for every element and time period, so you feel like it should be more like interestingly diverse to traverse the space.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
but they've kind of chucked it all in the same and made it.
Angry Earth, okay.
Particles aren't an indication of the corruption. Do you realize the complete implications of this? That storm bar has been there for millennia. The anchor of that again. Just when we've made
For
this
millennia.
discovery, this exit seems entirely
I was about to say that strong assassin's vibe
Oh, yeah.
to this outfit.
Also, if you listen to his accent, he is the most German.
but I give you my word, at least one of us.
Of course.
Yes, it could be a good thing. Do send a message when you know the time and place. Now.
Oh, yeah, I hear it. Oh, sorry.
Hooray! We have gotten the second one done. Cool. So where's the closest fast travel? I can't quite recall to the inn yet, so... I have to get up here. Because of course I do. Closest one I think is straight across the... Probably straight across to here, and then I can warp across Brightwood. Frustrating. Right, I want to kind of bounce around a bit to show you some of the other areas, to show just how frustratingly similar they all are. Also,
yes, please.
being in charge of any area changes nothing. Right. The main difference with governance in the different places is, right, whichever faction's in charge gets some resources that they can steal, and then if the governor is a horrible person, they will set the taxes to be extreme, steal everyone else's money, and then change servers.
Cool.
Yeah. Colonial embezzlement, still a thing in video
Love
games.
Online gaming, yeah. I won't lie, I do mostly play games that do not involve
Same.
any online component, yeah.
I see no grand reason to. Okay, so I wonder where they're going to send me for the next bit. I wonder if I need to get up to level 40 in order to move on. Because I would guess Restless Shore is the next area. Interesting. They did this last time where they just had a section where I was like, hey, go hit this level and then we'll let you continue. I wonder if that's what they're going to do again. Anyway, we are now exiting the swamp into autumnal pinewood forest. And there's a huge bridge. Which fills the niche of a Roman aqueduct, right? It feels like this is filling the idea of a Roman aqueduct.
Yes, and yet it feels very fantasy world.
Exactly.
Worldscape, yeah.
It's not an aqueduct.
It makes me.
It just.
Yeah, it makes me think of Plague Tale: Innocence. Have you played it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know the bit where you like cross the like battlefield, and there's the bit. Yeah, that's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, and
Another
right there's
historical
the
game as opposed to an actual.
there's the actual Roman aqueduct right next to town, and they're like, oh yes, this is totally a viable thing. We're still just like vaguely functional in the 14th century, and we're just like, huh, sir, what? Hugo, repeat that for me, please. What do you mean it's functional? Oh, great. There's a whole bunch of horrifying... Okay, this is going to be spooky for a bit, because all of these red pillars are spouts of corruption.
Wow, okay.
Which players are supposed to be like random encounters that the players have to band together in order to deal with. Because then it's dangerous for everyone to walk through here. And you know it's dangerous because the color palette freaks out. And I
I
am
see that. Yeah.
I am too close to that. I'm gonna get attacked. Our best bet is to just run like crazy and hope that we're gonna be fine. Ah. I'm gonna run straight for the woods. Yep, I'm gonna die.
Wait.
Yeah, that guy had magic. So we're gonna put a tree in between us and him. And then we are going to keep running, and I think we're good. Okay. We made it. Sort of. If I go down this way... Nope. Wrong way. Okay, we go up the road this way, and then we get to the fast travel point. Perfect. Okay, we're good. Nobody panic. I didn't just nearly jump out of my skin when I got chunked for half my health. Okay. So we'll head up to Fort Alazar and then just warp around somewhere to wrap up the stream, I think. Actually, we're... Good, we're almost at this. Just next...
Cool.
Next intersection, turn left, it looks like. Also, yeah, this town looks exactly like all the other towns, but with less falling into the swamp.
It
It's
does.
so
I mean, I'm
interesting.
enjoying the aesthetic of this like road with the little building and the lanterns. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very like spooky medievalism vibe.
It's spooky medievalism,
Mm.
which is not terrible. It's just not. I want to mark this question mark off while I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the world of like 17th century Americas and the world of Europe during the early or even like high Middle Ages is very different in terms of just the makeup of the space, like the way that things would be either homogenous or not homogenous, and like the different types of people that would be interacting with other people in those spaces and all those sorts of things. So I guess the fact that they're saying that it's set in the 17th century, but then they're creating this world that they've tried to make quite like homogeneously medieval Europe almost, but not, is very jarring.
Yeah, it is.
Like it is and it isn't. I don't know. I mean, that's just from what I've seen today. Like maybe there's more throughout the space, but
I'm just gonna quick fight a dryad here, quick, because of course dryads exist in this.
of course. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're the angry earth. That's what the angry earth
Right.
does.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Obviously. Hmm.
It's so
Okay.
so deeply strange, isn't it?
I love that you can fast travel, but you don't have mounts.
Yeah, they justified it by saying every domesticated animal went feral whenever they tried to bring them to Aeternum.
Terrible.
But then Azoth lets you
Hate that.
teleport. But only in specific
Yeah,
spots
exactly.
that are shrines,
But it
that are clearly
doesn't let
actively
you-
venerated, but also not. Right, there's no religion
But it
around
doesn't
Azoth.
let you ride
Yes.
the giant stone bears.
Correct.
Which is, that'd be
A
the dream. They
travesty.
should talk, as someone in the chat was saying, they should talk, and I think we should be able to ride them.
Yes,
Giant creepy stone bear companions. Come on.
it would be very funny. Oh, hello,
Oh.
random person. Thank you, friend. I'm glad people are starting to show up here, I guess.
So, what's this space that we're in now?
This is the home of the faction we're actually a part of, right? Well, we
Right,
are
okay. So
the
like a kind
Soul
of
Wardens.
main base.
Right, so this is our main story quest faction base,
Cool.
which our mentor
it
figure...
has action-based vibes.
Exactly. Right, because we are part of the Syndicate, but we are also, because this is an MMO, part of a neutral faction that is arbitrating between all of them.
Of course. Cool.
Yes.
Oh, we love a good map table. We love it.
You love it.
Yeah.
Look at that map.
Some
What
tools.
wait, hold up. Okay, so this is paper, not parchment, thank goodness.
Fully on the floor.
For rule 1, this is clearly paper, not parchment. We're okay. Rule 2, how the hell did you make a piece of paper this big?
This big! I love it.
I mean, if it was
personally.
parchment, I would have more concerns about how you made a piece of parchment this big.
Yeah.
But the question still stands. And
we're
It's-
just walking on it.
I'm just gonna
Great.
walk across the map because I was hoping it would be able to read what was here, but sadly it is too faded.
Just the name, yeah.
I've heard that
Maybe it's cloth. Maybe it is cloth.
I thought
Uh-huh.
I was part of
Wait.
a great cause, a holy mission.
What?
Story of my life, really. The other
This
night,
guy's
I
actually a
chasing
Templar.
relics stolen from Jerusalem by
Jerusalem!
sea and by sea. Like
Wait, this guy's actually a Templar.
pursued them. I'm not sure they ever even existed. Our knight commander.
Sorry, I've been memeing about them like calling things Templars that are not Templars.
After a
This
storm,
guy's actually a
they were
Templar.
shipwrecked on a strange beach. Many drowned. But
Quote,
I've
that's so
always
funny.
been a strong swimmer.
Interesting!
Is it the lucky man who outlived
Yeah.
every cause?
That's
So,
that's a
Maybe
real
the lucky. Thank you.
mismatch of times
Yeah,
periods.
yeah, I mean, I told you, no one can die in Eternum, right? I did remember to mention that part, right?
Both of us have a
Nobody dies here. You can die, you'll just
Right.
respawn. For
So the
centuries.
NPCs like the same. So they've just been here for centuries.
Yeah, some of them have.
Okay,
He's-
that's how they get away with that,
Yes.
as though the Crusades were in the 17th century. Cool.
Wait, yeah. Jeez.
Interesting.
Okay.
What a choice.
I need to show you a document because this document is very funny to me.
to fight alongside them.
Okay.
First light, I think. De Magnete. Okay.
Yeah, I see the comment as well. Like, it's not just a PC power. Yeah, I assumed that was like you are not dying, you're respawning, but I didn't realize everyone on the
Oh yeah,
island.
no, this isn't
okay.
everyone on the island. So, we're gonna go back through that dialogue in a moment. I just want to read this one first. De Magnete on Magnets and Azoth. As my full treatise of De Magnete successfully made the journey to Aeterna with me, and having no knowledge of others with copies of their own, it falls to me to continue Gilbert's investigations on the nature of the magnet. As he states, knowledge of magnets is present across all the world, from the earliest Greek and Jewish and Egyptian scholars to far and distant China, with many years of study being dedicated to their effects. Here in this Terra Aeternum, I may unlock a new path of research. Might Azoth influence these magnets in some way? Will they redirect the needle to a new north? Will they improve and enhance the capabilities of magnets? Only time and experimentation will tell. So, spot the problem. Just that.
There's just so much going on here in such a small
It's such a condensed chunk.
Greek and Jewish and Egyptian
And China.
and China. Mm.
One of these things ain't like the others. So, Judaism exists in this universe because this is just the real world. There was a dialogue box that mentions Isaac Newton as well. So, right, this is the real world. But with all of the conspiracy theories and random people went across the sea, all wound up here. So there's also another one that is a Tale of Aeternum, I believe. Of... No, it's not
Greek
there.
and Jewish. Great stuff.
Where is it? Brightwood? No. Windsward. King and Emerald. Nope. Whatever, there's a couple of things that mention King Arthur.
I've heard legends about the soul water
Okay.
since I was a boy.
Anyway, read.
Uh,
But I get to fight
Take it. We're gonna read this guy
I
again.
feel like I'm part of
Since I was a
history.
boy.
Uh huh.
I was duped.
Oh yeah. Also, since he was a boy, when he was not living in Aeternum, he heard about the Soul Wardens
No.
living on this
Yeah,
island
that's why I was like,
that no one can leave.
but you're already a Templar, and your knights were.
And spicy.
Chasing relics stolen from Jerusalem. Of course you are.
This is a Templar conspiracy theory. This just is. I know this.
It is.
I'm not sure they ever even existed.
At least, I mean, it dunks on the conspiracy theory, but still, says the conspiracy theory happened.
Not a trustworthy man. After a storm, we ended up shipwrecked on a strange beach. Many drowned. But I've always been a strong swimmer. Is it the lucky man who outlives every
Interesting.
cause he's ever joined? Emil the Lucky, they can call me. But enough you, I think.
There you go. I feel like whoever at Amazon wrote this watched like
All of us are very lucky.
Too much Curse of Oak Island, I think. Also, he still
I was
has...
gonna say National Treasure, but
Yeah.
but like I just don't know that they know. Do they know the difference between like the Freemasons and the like?
Great question.
Templars in the Middle Ages.
I'm also
You-
not sure if they know the difference between reality and Warhammer, given that the Penitence medallion
Absolutely not.
on his shoulder plate. We've seen ones with the full like script.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
wax seal. It's just
yeah.
Warhammer. But yeah, Raptorus. I think we can say that Christianity is confirmed to exist in this game, which raises far more questions than it does answers.
Everything about this game is raising more questions than it is answering.
That is
To be honest.
That is half of the reason I do this series is just to inflict people who know what they're talking
To
about
just-
with this game
With
and watch
confusion?
them try and process.
Welcome home. I've been busy recruiting new wardens.
Oh
Our little
gosh.
family is growing by the day.
Hooray.
Blue skies and blasted mines, you astound me. Perhaps
Hooray.
Our
Also,
little, our little family.
Agreed.
It's a strong
these
colonial
people
kind
that
of
have
logic.
the people we have met
Interesting.
exactly once.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's your faction.
But that's it, right? It's that like same like colonial logic of the like, you know, with father, like that like paternalistic,
Yes.
we're helping these people bullshit.
Memories are starting.
Yep.
Like we're creating and like that it's the same thing that modern businesses do to exploit their workers, being like, we're a little family here. Like, okay.
No higher
Yep.
than
Anyway, different issue.
perhaps another one of my
Oh my god. No.
recruits minted a secret fighting circle who
Ah,
just what
I know where we're going. We're going to Countless Keys.
As softly said, fortune is not on this side of the
Also, this guy quotes Greek people all the time.
those combatants all gather in
He just quoted Sophocles at us. He's quoted
Yeah.
Plato at us a bunch of times.
Beautiful.
Learn it. Oh hey, what are you doing up here?
How refreshing to see the factions put aside their differences in pursuit of a greater goal. Think of what we could accomplish if this was a norm. Providence, destiny, the hand of Lady Fortuna herself. Also, I would say if I weren't a man
Yeah,
of
sure. A man of rationality wouldn't talk about Providence, destiny, or fortune. What? I'm sure Newton has writings on that explicit subject.
The Spanish
If I
and
weren't a man of
Oriental
rationality.
I was
I
on my way to
just-
Oxford to lecture on avian anatomy, you know, when the ship carrying me across the channel suddenly...
Okay, wait, that actually dates... Wait, that actually helps date the game. Wait, hold up. This actually does help date the game. Once again confirming, you know, 16th... Actually, this would say 16th or 17th century, not so much
Yeah.
18th. Right? Because if the Spanish are able to attack someone in the channel, that means...
Uh-huh.
That means... It has to be fairly early. But that means probably before Newton, who is also mentioned in this
I
game.
just
So, I don't know.
I
Dates are
don't
hard.
think this yeah, don't know that this is going to be possible to. I feel like there's going to be 50 different elements that dated at different parts of this
Look,
period.
they're trying to be they're trying to be rational. So if we try and
Yeah.
apply rationality to the game says no, screw you. What year is it?
It's a scientist's job to reveal them. Yes, there's so much to learn and all the time in the world to do it.
Inconceivable.
Uh-huh. That had to be an intentional one.
It's got to be.
That had to be intentional. Okay, so 5.7 kilometers away, we'll actually warp down to Cutlass Keys, and then we can... Oh, come on, I have to get over to the Spirit Shrine over here first. Fine. Once we get up here, we are going to warp down to Cutlass Keys and show you the, at least a slightly more cheerful swampy area. It is pretty.
Okay.
Right, when the game looks good.
Alright.
It looks good.
I mean,
then
it's pretty. I love, running around those kind of world spaces, so...
Exactly. And then once we get down there, we'll call it a day, overlooking the
Cool.
flat bluffs of not Florida.
It is indeed very much lunchtime in Australia.
Agreed. And it is very much post-dinner time here. So,
Bedtime, yeah.
so we are going to just finish up here with one warp. Straight down here. Come on. No. No. Warp. Thank you. And then we will look over the flat wastes and the ocean. Should actually be pleasant weather for it.
Beautiful.
And then we'll call it enough.
Nice.
As we're wrapping up, a question I like to ask everyone is if you were magically put in charge of the game, what is the first thing that changes?
Oh, gosh.
Right, what's the first thing that needs doing?
I don't even know. I mean, from what we've just been talking about, like, I guess some, like, honest historical specificity, as opposed to this, like, weird, it's historical, but it's not because you're in a fantasy world. Like, I'd love for them to just tell you the year and, like, connect some of these dots to the real histories that they're drawing them from. I have no idea what that would look like in the game, though. Part of me just wants to say that, like, that outfit shouldn't be possible.
Fair.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a question we'd love to ask historians, right? Like, if you could magically actually make games good, what would you do?
Exactly.
I don't know. There's too many possibilities.
Honestly, though, I do like the answer of just put a specific year on it, because that lets you actually start narrowing down your research, right? You can draw aesthetics from wherever the heck you want. But then that lets you actually
like
start having a social world that is present in a meaningful way. And help
'cause
shape your mechanics around
obviously-
what you, a person in this year who arrived here, would be doing. And that can
Exactly,
clash.
'cause you've
That can
got-
clash with Eternum.
Yeah, and you've got this freedom, right, as we've been saying, of this, like, fantasy world, because it's this magic space that's not been discovered by, not been, like, really, I guess, not discovered, but not been, the information about it hasn't been, like, given to the rest of the world. So it's this, like, magic space that people have been landing on and then surviving for however long. So you've got the option to have anything from any of time in the world that preceded this year. Like, you can still do all of that and give that historical, like, connection to kind of have, I think, more interesting, sorry, another giant gator.
Another giant
more
gator.
Interesting conversations, and it'd let you ground it in a way and make connections to the history that you know about the world. I think it would make it more interesting. But yeah, all the skeletons. God, make the skellies nice. Get rid of that narrative.
Agreed.
Burn that lore.
I agree. A good chunk of the enemy lore is the other thing that needs to be burnt. Because the broader idea, I think that's a problem with that part, is just they're trying to justify most of the world being functionally uninhabited while still letting you fight stuff. And just like, don't make the world uninhabited, right? The only settlements that are not ruined are these big ones that you can warp to, right? The ones that say settlement are the only ones that are not ruined. It's like, guys, why? So many of the quests here complain about everyone starving because they have no hinterland. There are towns without a hinterland.
Yeah,
And it's just like, well, there's your problem, folks.
Yeah.
You're all too busy squabbling with each other to deal with the problems of you have no hinterland to sustain your cities. So, I don't know. It ends up
feels very
feeling
like fantasy world builder put down a bunch of things in different spots on a map and didn't like really develop.
Yeah, I mean,
the way
and
that
there are a bunch of
community would.
stories about it. About, oh yeah, you know, our food is either rotting or we don't have enough of it, and we can't get tools, and we have to send stuff to each other. But then the faction system actively works against enabling that.
Of course.
So, right, it's just
We love it.
Putting a coherent date to it, and then putting a more coherent sense of, I guess, how the moment-to-moment of the world and its settlements functions seem like two very good places to start.
Yeah.
But, you know, on the bright side, Florida is very pretty.
This is different. Yeah, this is a different space. I'm enjoying seeing this. Yeah.
Exactly. If we go up there, we find a copy-pasted town. But down here, actually meaningfully different.
Something different.
Yeah. So, I think...
Same gators, but you know.
Exactly. I think, though, that is about where we leave off.
Wonderful.
So, agreed. So, where can people in chat find you if they liked what you do?
I probably Twitter
Yeah.
is the easiest. I share lots of things that I'm doing. Conferences, lots of conferences that we're doing at the moment are very like publicly accessible because they're online, so you can like pop into talks and things. So yeah, it's just Tess Watty. Tess is my name, and then Watty, which is a shortening of my surname. On Twitter, I can pop it in the chat. That's my Twitter. I'm logged in on. Just realized I'm on Twitch in my personal. I mean, you can follow that, but
yeah.
yeah. So that's me. Thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun.
Of course.
It's great to get to watch someone explore and talk to them about it without having the pressure of like actually not dying in the moment distracting me from the discussing. I'm very impressed that you can do both.
Oh, no, see, the secret is that I didn't. There was a bunch of times where I gave you a topic that I knew would take you a few minutes while I focused on not dying. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It is a pleasure as always. I mean, we keep doing things together, and so I'm very excited for the behind-the-scenes stuff that we will get to do.
Yeah,
but
lots more
for
things coming
the
up.
public things, it's nice to be able to do things that people have access to. You know?
Yeah, and if you haven't already, another thing you might be able to find via my Twitter, or you can look up, there's a Twitter conference that Middle Ages Modern Games, that the public medievalist people do, and I found that's a really fun one for like, and there's another one coming up in a few months.
Have they
year
put
that
out
I'm
the
helping
CFP
organize,
for that
but
yet?
Pardon?
Have they put out the CFP for that yet?
Don't think so.
Okay,
Pretty sure we
I didn't see it, and the odds that
Writing-
Rob would not tell me about it seems so low.
Yeah.
So-
I think we're working on it at the moment, so we'll be soon. But yeah, those kind of things. There's much more of that coming into the way that we operate. So thank you all, everyone who's been watching and who's been in the chat. Some really awesome comments and ideas and stuff there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to wrap up the things on business and future stream schedule, you can see it on the schedule tab of the page. But on Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have more God of War. And then we'll be starting the first patron suggested game, which, once again, if you want to support the channel, there is a Patreon that you can support. Helps create more things, better hardware, better channel art, more guests, all that fun stuff. But the first patron suggested game is going to be Lego Indiana Jones, the original. And so we're going to end up talking about a whole bunch of Indiana Jones and therefore Orientalisms. So get those ready.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be a great time. Also, if you like,
absolutely try and tune into that.
Amazing.
That sounds fantastic.
Also, next week's Historians vs. New World will be Dr. Bill Farley, also called on the internet known as the video game archaeologist. So we're going to be talking about archaeogaming and some of his super cool work. So I am very excited for that. So if you're watching the VOD, make sure you're followed and try and catch our stuff live, because as you can see, there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens when you're live and able to talk to us directly. And it is super duper fun to have people here. So, on that note, we're gonna call it a night. So, thank you all for watching, and we will see you on the next stream. Alright, bye everyone.